Every single night you slip into a world where the laws of physics bend to imagination, where deceased loved ones speak again, and where you live entire lifetimes that vanish like morning mist, leaving only ghostly fragments that dissolve even as you try to grasp them. Tonight, we'll journey through 3 intertwined mysteries: the story of a woman who lost the ability to forget her dreams, and what her rare condition revealed about why nature designed us to lose these nightly adventures, the underground laboratory where scientists discovered that forgetting dreams might be the very mechanism that allows us to remember anything at all, and the revolutionary discovery that the same neurons responsible for erasing your dreams are secretly reorganizing your entire understanding of reality while you sleep. If you're looking for a soothing exploration to drift off to, a gentle narrative to accompany your evening routine, or something contemplative to focus on during quiet moments, settle in as we unravel these nocturnal mysteries together. Before we begin this journey through the hidden architecture of sleep and memory, if you find peace in these nighttime explorations of consciousness, I'd be deeply grateful if you gave the video a like and subscribed. It helps this quiet sanctuary of scientific wonder reach other curious souls who seek understanding in the twilight hours. And if you're moved to connect, let me know in the comments where you're listening from tonight, and whether you're someone who remembers vivid dreams or finds them slipping away like water through fingers. I love imagining our global gathering of night thinkers, from cozy beds in Tokyo to late-night studies in London, all united by fascination with these 8 hours we spend in parallel worlds each night. Let's begin. In 1983, a 47-year-old teacher named Rebecca walked into a sleep clinic in Boston with a problem that sounds like a blessing but had become a curse. She remembered every single dream she'd ever had since childhood, not just vaguely, but with the crystalline clarity most of us reserve for waking memories. She could recall dreams from when she was 5 years old with the same precision you might remember yesterday's breakfast. At first, this might sound wonderful, a kind of superpower that lets you hold on to those magical nocturnal adventures, but Rebecca's life had become a labyrinth where she could no longer distinguish which memories belonged to waking life and which were fragments from 42 years of accumulated dreams. Think about that for a moment. Really let it sink in. The average person dreams for about 2 hours each night, which means by age 47, Rebecca had accumulated roughly 17,000 hours of dream memories, the equivalent of 2 full years of continuous experience that, for most of us, would have dissolved into nothingness, but for her remained as vivid and present as any waking moment. She would meet someone new and couldn't be certain if they were a stranger or someone from one of thousands of dream encounters. She'd visit places and feel overwhelming familiarity, unable to determine if she'd been there in reality or only in sleep's strange theatre. The researchers who studied Rebecca's case discovered something that would fundamentally change how we understand the relationship between dreams, memory, and consciousness itself. Her brain, through what appeared to be a rare genetic variation, was missing a crucial mechanism that exists in all of us, a beautiful and ruthless editor that works through the night, deciding which experiences deserve preservation and which must be released into oblivion. This mechanism, which we'll explore in intimate detail tonight, turns out to be one of nature's most elegant solutions to a problem that has shaped the evolution of consciousness itself. How does a brain that never stops creating stories manage to maintain a coherent narrative of self? But hold that thought gently, because to understand what was different about Rebecca's brain, we first need to journey into the remarkable world of what happens in a typical brain during those hours when consciousness dims and dreams bloom. And this journey begins not in a laboratory or a university, but in a place you know intimately, your own bed, in those precious moments when wakefulness begins its nightly surrender. Picture yourself lying down after a long day. Your head touches the pillow, and already, before sleep truly claims you, something profound begins happening in the darkness behind your closed eyelids. The approximately 86 billion neurons in your brain, which have been firing in complex patterns all day to maintain your waking consciousness, begin to shift their rhythm like a vast orchestra transitioning between movements. The beta waves that dominated your alert waking state, those rapid fire oscillations between 13 and 30 cycles per second, start to slow and deepen. This transition isn't sudden or uniform. Different regions of your brain begin their journey towards sleep at different rates, like lights dimming section by section across a vast city at dusk. Your prefrontal cortex, that sophisticated region behind your forehead responsible for logic, planning, and self-control, begins to reduce its activity early in this process. This is why, in those drowsy moments before sleep, you might find yourself entertaining thoughts that your fully awake mind would immediately dismiss as nonsensical. You're experiencing the twilight of rational thought, a liminal space where the strict rules of waking logic begin to soften. As you drift deeper, your brain waves continue their transformation. Alpha waves emerge, those gentle oscillations between 8 and 12 cycles per second that create a sense of calm awareness. If you've ever meditated, you've likely experienced an abundance of these alpha waves, that state of relaxed but present consciousness. But tonight they're just a way station on a longer journey. Then comes a moment that sleep researchers call the hypnagogic transition, from the Greek words hypnos, meaning sleep, and agogos, meaning leading. This is when things get genuinely strange. You might experience what scientists call hypnagogic hallucinations, those fleeting visions or sounds that seem absolutely real, but exist only in the borderland between waking and sleeping. Perhaps you see geometric patterns dancing behind your eyelids, or hear someone calling your name, or feel like you're falling, causing that sudden jerk that yanks you back to alertness. That falling sensation and the muscle jerk that follows, called a hypnic jerk, is actually a fascinating glimpse into your evolutionary past. Some researchers believe it's a vestigial reflex from our tree-dwelling ancestors, a safety mechanism that would prevent them from falling out of trees as they dozed off. Others suggest it's simply your brain misinterpreting the muscle relaxation of falling asleep as actual falling, triggering an emergency response. Either way, it's a reminder that sleep, despite feeling like the most natural thing in the world, is actually an incredibly complex neurological achievement. As you settle past these hypnagogic experiences and enter stage 1 sleep, your brainwaves slow further into theta rhythm, 4 to 7 cycles per second. This is still light sleep, so light that if someone woke you, you might insist you weren't even asleep at all. Yet already profound changes are occurring. Your hippocampus, that seahorse-shaped structure deep in your temporal lobe that's crucial for forming new memories, begins to replay the day's experiences in compressed bursts, like a film editor reviewing footage at high speed. These replays aren't random. Your hippocampus seems to be identifying patterns, connections, and significant moments from your waking hours. It's having a conversation with your neocortex, the outer layer of your brain responsible for higher-order thinking, transferring information in a process that will continue throughout the night. This is the beginning of memory consolidation, the transformation of temporary, fragile memories into more permanent storage. Stage 2. Sleep arrives like a deeper current carrying you further from shore. Your brain waves slow even more, but now something remarkable appears in the electrical recordings of your neural activity. Sleep spindles and K-complexes. Sleep spindles are brief bursts of rhythmic activity, lasting half a second to 2 seconds, oscillating at about 12 to 14 cycles per second. Under a metaphorical microscope, they look like tiny tornadoes of electrical activity spinning through your brain. These sleep spindles aren't just random neural noise. Research has shown they play a crucial role in memory consolidation and learning. People who produce more sleep spindles tend to perform better on memory tasks the next day. They're like little workshops where your brain is actively processing and strengthening the neural connections formed during your waking hours. Some scientists believe sleep spindles also serve as a kind of gatekeeper, preventing external sensory information from reaching your consciousness and disrupting your sleep. K-complexes, named simply for their shape on an EEG reading, are different beasts altogether. They're large, slow waves that seem to sweep across your brain like neural tsunamis. They can be triggered by external stimuli, a sudden sound, a touch, even hearing your own name, but instead of waking you, they seem to help keep you asleep by suppressing your response to these potentially disruptive inputs. They're like your brain's bouncers, evaluating each sensory intrusion and usually deciding it's not worth waking you for. As you descend into stage 3 sleep, also called slow wave sleep or deep sleep, your brain waves slow dramatically into delta rhythm, less than 4 cycles per second. This is the sleep from which it's hardest to wake someone, the sleep where if you're awakened, you feel groggy and disoriented, experiencing what researchers call sleep inertia. Your brain during deep sleep is like a city during a power conservation period, with only essential services running while major renovation work takes place. And renovation is exactly what's happening. During slow-wave sleep, your brain is literally cleaning itself. The spaces between your brain cells expand by up to 60%, allowing cerebrospinal fluid to flow more freely through your neural tissue. This fluid acts like a washing system, flushing out metabolic waste products that accumulated during your waking hours. Among these waste products is beta-amyloid, the protein that forms the plaques associated with Alzheimer's disease. This is one reason why chronic sleep deprivation is increasingly recognized as a risk factor for neurodegenerative diseases. Every night of good sleep is literally a deep cleaning session for your brain. But here's where our story takes an unexpected turn, because while all this maintenance and memory consolidation is happening, while your brain is being washed clean of metabolic debris, something else is stirring in the depths of your sleeping mind. About 90 minutes after you first closed your eyes, your brain suddenly shifts into a state that paradoxically resembles waking more than sleeping, at least in terms of neural activity. Your eyes, hidden beneath closed lids, begin to dart back and forth in rapid movements. You've entered REM sleep, and with it the theatre of dreams truly opens its curtains. REM sleep, discovered almost by accident in 1953 when a graduate student named Eugene Aserinsky noticed his sleeping son's eyes moving rapidly beneath closed lids, revolutionized our understanding of sleep and dreams. When Aserinsky and his advisor Nathaniel Kleitman began monitoring brain activity during these rapid eye movement periods, they discovered something astonishing. The sleeping brain during REM wasn't quiet or restful at all. It was blazing with activity, consuming nearly as much energy as it did during waking hours. But this activity had a peculiar character. While your visual cortex, emotional centers, and motor planning areas were highly active, your prefrontal cortex, that region responsible for logic and critical thinking, remained relatively quiet. Your dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, specifically, which normally acts as your inner critic and reality checker, was essentially offline. This is why in dreams you can fly without questioning the physics, meet people who died years ago without recognizing the impossibility, or find yourself back in high school taking an exam for a class you never attended without immediately recognizing the absurdity. Meanwhile, your limbic system, the emotional heart of your brain, including structures like the amygdala and anterior cingulate cortex, is hyperactive during REM sleep. This explains why dreams are so emotionally intense, why they can leave you feeling elated, terrified, or profoundly sad, even when the actual content, viewed from waking perspective, seems relatively mundane. Your brain is essentially running emotional fire drills, processing and integrating emotional experiences without the moderating influence of rational thought. But perhaps the most remarkable feature of REM sleep is what doesn't happen: movement. Despite your motor cortex being active, despite your brain sending signals to move, your body remains still except for your eyes and diaphragm. This is because of a remarkable safety mechanism called rematonia. Your brainstem actively paralyzes your voluntary muscles during REM sleep, preventing you from physically acting out your dreams. The neurotransmitters GABA and glycine flood your motor neurons, essentially disconnecting your brain's movement commands from your muscles. Consider the elegant wisdom of this system. Your brain needs to simulate movement to practice and process motor patterns, to run through scenarios that might include running, fighting, or flying. But if your body actually responded to these neural commands, you'd be thrashing around every night, potentially injuring yourself or others. So evolution developed this clever solution. Let the brain rehearse movement while keeping the body safely still. When this system fails, the results can be dramatic. People with REM sleep behavior disorder, where this paralysis mechanism doesn't work properly, literally act out their dreams. They might punch, kick, leap out of bed, or run into walls, all while completely asleep. Studying these individuals has provided remarkable insights into the nature of dreams and the precise mechanisms that normally keep us still during our nightly adventures. Now, you might wonder why we dream at all. Why does the brain create these elaborate scenarios, these emotion-drenched narratives that we mostly forget anyway? The answer, or other answers, because there are several competing theories, reveal something profound about the nature of consciousness itself. One prominent theory, called the threat simulation hypothesis, suggests that dreams evolved as a kind of virtual reality training ground for dealing with dangers. Throughout human evolution, those who could mentally rehearse responses to threats, practicing escape routes and defensive strategies in the safety of sleep, would have had survival advantages. This might explain why so many dreams involve being chased, falling, or facing various dangers. Your brain is running safety drills, keeping your threat detection and response system sharp. But dreams aren't all about fear and danger. Another theory, the default network hypothesis, suggests that dreaming is what happens when your brain's default mode network, the system that's active when you're not focused on the outside world, runs without the constraints of sensory input or rational oversight. This network is associated with self-referential thinking, imagining future scenarios, and integrating experiences into your sense of self. Dreams, in this view, are your brain's way of updating your internal model of yourself and your place in the world. The contemporary theory that's gaining the most scientific support, however, is more subtle and perhaps more profound. It suggests that dreams are a byproduct of a crucial overnight process, the transformation and consolidation of memories. Your brain isn't just passively storing the day's experiences like files in a cabinet, it's actively analysing, connecting, and integrating new information with existing knowledge. Dreams might be the conscious experience of this integration process, the subjective sensation of your brain finding patterns, making connections, and updating its model of reality. This brings us to a crucial question that Rebecca's case illuminated so dramatically. If dreams are involved in memory processing, why do we forget almost all of them? Why did evolution design a system that creates these elaborate experiences only to erase them almost immediately? The answer reveals one of the most elegant and counterintuitive aspects of how memory works. To understand this, we need to meet a specific group of neurons that were discovered only in the last decade, neurons that changed everything we thought we knew about sleep, dreams, and forgetting. These neurons, located in the hypothalamus, are called MCH neurons, named after the neuropeptide they produce, melanin-concentrating hormone. During REM sleep, precisely when your most vivid dreams occur, these MCH neurons become highly active. But here's the remarkable part. Their primary function appears to be actively promoting forgetting. This might seem paradoxical at first. Why would the brain have neurons dedicated to forgetting during the same period when it's consolidating memories? The answer lies in understanding that memory isn't just about storage, it's about selection. Your brain needs to forget far more than it remembers in order to function effectively. If you remembered every detail of every experience, every variation of every repeated action, every dream, every passing thought, your memory would become an unusable archive of noise drowning out the signal of important information. The MCH neurons appear to be part of an elegant sorting system. While your hippocampus is replaying and consolidating important memories from the day, the MCH neurons are actively preventing the dreams themselves from being encoded into long-term memory. They're like quality control inspectors, ensuring that the fictional narratives of dreams don't contaminate your memory of real events. This is what was different in Rebecca's brain. Her MCH neurons, through what researchers believe was a genetic variation, weren't functioning normally. Without this forgetting mechanism, her dreams were being encoded with the same strength as waking memories. The result wasn't a gift, but a curse, a mind overwhelmed with 17,000 hours of fictional experiences indistinguishable from reality. But the story of MCH neurons reveals something even more profound about the nature of memory and consciousness. These neurons don't just help us forget dreams, they appear to be part of a larger system that helps us forget strategically throughout our lives. They're active not just during sleep, but also during certain waking states, particularly when we're learning new information that contradicts or updates old information. Think about learning to ride a bicycle. At first, you have to consciously think about balance, pedaling, steering, all as separate actions. But as you master the skill, these separate memories need to be integrated into a single, smooth motor program. The old, fragmented memories of individual components need to be forgotten, or at least suppressed, in favour of the integrated skill. MCH neurons appear to be involved in this kind of adaptive forgetting, helping your brain let go of outdated or fragmented information in favour of more efficient integrated knowledge. This is particularly relevant to dreams because dreams often involve impossible or contradictory scenarios. You might dream of being in your childhood home, but it has rooms that never existed. You might dream of a person who has the face of one friend but the personality of another. If these contradictory experiences were strongly encoded into memory, they could interfere with your accurate memories of real places and people. The MCH neurons prevent this interference by ensuring that dream memories remain weak and fleeting. But here's where things get even more interesting. While MCH neurons are promoting forgetting of the dream content itself, other processes during REM sleep are strengthening certain types of memories, particularly emotional memories and procedural skills. It's as if your brain is using the dream state as a workshop where memories are being processed, refined, and integrated, while the dreams themselves are just the waste products of this process, meant to be discarded like wood shavings from a carpenter's shop. This dual process of remembering and forgetting during sleep helps explain one of the most common and frustrating experiences we all share, the vanishing dream. You wake up with the vivid sensation of having just experienced something profound, meaningful, or at least intensely interesting. You can feel the emotional residue of the dream. Perhaps you even remember that it was important, but the actual content slips away like smoke through your fingers. The harder you try to grasp it, the more quickly it seems to disappear. This isn't a failure of your memory system, it's the system working exactly as designed. The emotional tone of the dream, which was processed by your highly active limbic system, might be worth preserving as part of your emotional learning. But the specific narrative content, the impossible scenarios and contradictory details, are actively erased to prevent them from contaminating your memory of reality. The few dreams we do remember tend to be those we wake up during or immediately after, when the forgetting mechanism hasn't had time to complete its work, or they're dreams that were so emotionally intense that they overwhelmed the forgetting mechanism. Nightmares, for instance, with their intense fear response, are more likely to be remembered than pleasant or neutral dreams. This might seem like poor design, remembering the bad while forgetting the good, but it makes evolutionary sense. Remembering threats, even imagined ones, could have survival value, while remembering pleasant but impossible scenarios could lead to dangerous confusion about reality. The discovery of MCH neurons and their role in active forgetting has profound implications beyond just understanding dreams. It suggests that forgetting isn't simply a passive decay of memories over time, but an active, regulated process that's just as important for healthy cognition as remembering. Your brain has to constantly decide what to keep and what to discard, what to strengthen and what to weaken, what to integrate and what to isolate. This process continues throughout our lives, not just during sleep. Every time you update your knowledge, refine a skill, or change your mind about something, your brain is actively forgetting outdated information to make room for the new. This is why it can be so hard to unlearn incorrect information or break bad habits. Your brain has to actively suppress the old patterns while strengthening the new ones, a process that requires significant neural effort. The woman named Rebecca, whose inability to forget her dreams brought her to that Boston sleep clinic, eventually learned to manage her condition through a combination of techniques. She kept detailed journals to distinguish real memories from dream memories, developed reality checking habits, and worked with therapists to create mental categories for different types of experiences. But her case remained a powerful reminder of why we forget our dreams, not because they are unimportant, but because forgetting them is crucial for maintaining a coherent sense of reality. As we continue our journey through the landscape of sleep and dreams, let's turn our attention to another remarkable laboratory discovery. This one made not in Boston, but in an underground facility in Lyon, France, where scientists studying something completely different stumbled upon evidence that the same neurons responsible for forgetting dreams might be doing something even more extraordinary, reorganizing our fundamental understanding of space, time, and self. The Lyon Underground Sleep Laboratory, built 60 feet below ground to eliminate any possible electromagnetic interference, was originally designed to study the effects of complete sensory isolation on sleep patterns. The researchers, led by a neuroscientist named Michel Jouvet, who had already made groundbreaking discoveries about REM sleep in the 1960s, were interested in what happens to dreams when the brain receives absolutely no external sensory input, not even the subtle vibrations of traffic or the electromagnetic fields from power lines. What they found challenged everything they thought they knew about how the brain maintains its model of reality. Volunteers would spend weeks in this underground facility, sleeping in specially designed chambers that eliminated all external stimuli. Their brain activity was monitored continuously with equipment so sensitive it could detect the firing patterns of small groups of neurons. And in this perfect silence, something unexpected emerged. During REM sleep, when those MCH neurons were actively promoting forgetting, another network of neurons was doing something that had never been observed before. The place cells in the hippocampus, neurons that normally fire when you're in specific physical locations and help you navigate through space, were firing in completely novel patterns. They weren't replaying familiar routes or locations from the volunteers' waking experience. They were creating representations of spaces that didn't exist, impossible geometries that could never occur in three-dimensional reality. Even more remarkably, the grid cells in the entorhinal cortex, which normally create a kind of mental graph paper that helps you understand your position in space, were firing in patterns that suggested movement through dimensions beyond the usual three. It was as if the brain, freed from the constraints of sensory input and with its forgetting mechanism in high gear, was exploring mathematical possibilities of space that conscious thought could never access. One volunteer, a mathematician named Claire, provided particularly intriguing data. During her 3-week stay in the underground laboratory, her place cells and grid cells showed increasingly complex patterns during REM sleep. When she emerged and was asked to solve novel spatial reasoning problems, she performed significantly better than before her isolation. She described having insights about mathematical concepts she'd been struggling with for years, though she couldn't remember any specific dreams that related to mathematics. This phenomenon, which the researchers called hyperdimensional neural exploration, suggests that dreams might serve a function far more profound than simply processing daily experiences or simulating threats. The brain might be using the dream state with its relaxed constraints on logic and physics to explore solution spaces that rational thought can't access. The active forgetting promoted by MCH neurons ensures that these explorations don't confuse our waking understanding of reality, but the computational insights gained from these explorations might still influence our problem-solving abilities. Think about what this means. Every night your brain might be venturing into impossible worlds, testing the boundaries of logic, exploring spaces that can't exist, all while carefully ensuring you don't remember these journeys in detail. You wake up with your rational understanding of reality intact, but perhaps subtly influenced by these nocturnal explorations into the impossible. This could explain why so many scientific and artistic breakthroughs have been attributed to dreams. August Kekuli, discovering the ring structure of benzene after dreaming of a snake seizing its own tail. Dmitri Mendeleev seeing the periodic table of elements arranged in a dream. Paul McCartney hearing the melody for Yesterday in a dream. These weren't just random lucky accidents. They might represent moments when insights from the brain's hyperdimensional explorations during REM sleep managed to bridge the forgetting mechanism and influence conscious thought. The Leon experiments revealed something else extraordinary. The volunteers who spent the longest time in the underground facility began to show changes in their sleep architecture itself. Their REM periods became longer and more frequent, but more interestingly, the transition zones between different sleep stages became more fluid. Instead of discrete jumps from one stage to another, their brains seemed to develop a more continuous spectrum of states. One volunteer, a musician named David, showed particularly interesting changes. After 2 weeks underground, his brain began producing what the researchers called hybrid states, periods where characteristics of REM sleep and slow-wave sleep occurred simultaneously. His prefrontal cortex would show the slow waves typical of deep sleep, while his visual and emotional centers showed the activation patterns of REM. During these hybrid states, his MCH neurons showed a peculiar pattern of activity, pulsing in slow rhythms rather than their usual continuous firing. When David emerged from the laboratory, he reported a profound change in his creative process. He could enter flow states more easily, periods where creative work seemed to emerge without conscious effort. He described it as having learned to dream while awake, though he was careful to note that he wasn't hallucinating or confused about reality. Rather, he seemed to have developed the ability to access some of the free associative, constraint, relaxed thinking of dreams while maintaining conscious awareness. This observation led to a series of follow-up studies that revealed something remarkable about the relationship between creativity and the forgetting mechanism. Creative individuals, particularly those in fields requiring abstract thinking like mathematics, theoretical physics, and music composition, showed different patterns of MCH neuron activity during sleep. Their MCH neurons were just as active as anyone else's, preventing dream memories from contaminating waking memory, but they showed more variable patterns, moments of reduced activity that might allow certain abstract insights to cross the threshold into lasting memory. But the Lyon Laboratory's most profound discovery came from studying what happens when the forgetting mechanism is temporarily disrupted. Not permanently, as in Rebecca's case, but briefly and under controlled conditions. The researchers developed a technique using precisely timed auditory stimuli, specific tones played at exact moments during REM sleep that could temporarily reduce MCH neuron activity without waking the sleeper. When volunteers underwent this selective disruption, they remembered their dreams in extraordinary detail, but more importantly, they could observe the actual process of forgetting upon waking. They described the sensation of dream memories literally dissolving, like watching a detailed painting being gradually washed away by rain. One volunteer, a writer named Sarah, described it as feeling her dream memories being actively pulled away, as if by an invisible current. Sarah's description was more accurate than she knew. The brain imaging showed that as MCH neurons resumed their normal activity upon waking, they triggered cascades of activity that literally weakened the synaptic connections, forming the dream memories. It wasn't passive decay but active dismantling, like a construction crew deliberately taking apart a temporary structure. This active forgetting process doesn't just apply to dreams. The Lyon researchers discovered that similar patterns occur during waking hours when we're processing contradictory information or updating our beliefs. When you learn that something you believed was wrong, MCH neurons become active, helping to weaken the old incorrect memory while new, correct information is being encoded. This is why changing deeply held beliefs is so difficult and energy intensive. Your brain has to actively dismantle old neural patterns while building new ones. The implications extend even further. The researchers found that people with certain mental health conditions, particularly PTSD and some forms of depression, showed abnormal MCH neuron activity. In PTSD, traumatic memories that should be weakened and integrated over time remain vivid and intrusive, possibly because the forgetting mechanism isn't working properly for those specific memories. In some forms of depression, the opposite might occur, with overactive forgetting mechanisms preventing the formation of positive memories or the integration of positive experiences. This discovery has led to experimental treatments that target the forgetting mechanism. By carefully modulating MCH neuron activity, either through targeted drugs or through precisely timed sensory stimuli during sleep, researchers are exploring ways to help people forget traumatic memories or strengthen positive ones. It's delicate work, because as Rebecca's case showed, disrupting the forgetting mechanism too much can have devastating consequences. But perhaps the most profound insight from the Lyon Underground Laboratory concerns the nature of consciousness itself. The discovery that our brains actively explore impossible spaces during dreams, that we regularly venture into hyperdimensional neural territories only to forget these journeys, suggests that consciousness might be far more fluid and expansive than we normally experience. Consider this. Every night for about 2 hours your brain generates experiences that transcend the limitations of physical reality. You become someone else, you travel through time, you experience emotions that don't exist in waking life, you navigate spaces that couldn't exist in three-dimensional reality. And then, through the elegant action of MCH neurons and the forgetting mechanism, these experiences are erased, leaving only subtle traces, perhaps a lingering emotion, a vague sense of having touched something profound, or occasionally a creative insight that bridges the gap between dream and waking. This nightly cycle of creation and destruction, of exploration and forgetting, might be essential to consciousness itself. Without it, we might be like Rebecca, lost in a maze of real and unreal memories, or we might be unable to update our understanding of reality, trapped by every incorrect belief or outdated memory. The forgetting mechanism isn't a bug in the system, it's a feature. Perhaps the feature that allows consciousness to remain flexible, adaptive, and grounded in reality, while still being capable of imagination and creativity. As we delve deeper into this mystery, we encounter an even more remarkable discovery, one that emerged not from a sleep laboratory but from studying people who, through injury or rare genetic conditions, have damaged forgetting mechanisms. These individuals, sometimes called hypermnemonic or highly superior autobiographical memory individuals, remember vastly more than typical people, though usually not their dreams like Rebecca. Their experiences reveal the hidden cost of perfect memory and the wisdom of forgetting. Take the case of Jill Price, the first person diagnosed with hypothymestic syndrome, the ability to remember nearly every day of her life in vivid detail. Give her a date from any time after her 14th birthday, and she can tell you what day of the week it was, what she did, what the weather was like, what was on television. It sounds like a superpower, but Jill describes it as a burden. She can't forget embarrassments, traumas, or losses. Every argument, every moment of pain, every goodbye remains as fresh as if it just happened. Jill's brain shows interesting similarities to Rebecca's, though the specific mechanisms differ. While Rebecca's issue was primarily with dream forgetting, Jill's involves autobiographical memory. But both cases involve disruption of the active forgetting mechanisms that normally help us maintain psychological health. Jill's MCH neurons show unusual patterns during both sleep and waking, suggesting that the forgetting mechanism is globally impaired rather than specifically affecting dreams. What's particularly telling about cases like Jill's is that perfect memory doesn't translate to superior intelligence or creativity. In fact, many individuals with highly superior autobiographical memory report difficulties with abstract thinking and imagination. It's as if their minds are so cluttered with specific concrete memories that they struggle to see patterns, make generalizations, or imagine alternatives. They're trapped in the specific at the expense of the general. This brings us to a profound insight about the role of forgetting in intelligence itself. Intelligence isn't just about storing and retrieving information, it's about recognizing patterns, making connections, and applying knowledge flexibly to novel situations. All of these abilities require a certain amount of forgetting, or at least the ability to suppress specific details in favor of general principles. When you learn that all birds have feathers, wings, and beaks, you need to forget or at least de-emphasize the specific details of individual birds you've seen in favor of the general category. If you perfectly remembered every bird in complete detail but couldn't extract the general pattern, you'd struggle to recognize a new species as a bird. This is called categorical learning, and it depends on strategic forgetting just as much as remembering. The same principle applies to every aspect of learning and intelligence. When you learn mathematics, you need to forget the specific numbers used in practice problems and remember the general principles. When you learn a language, you need to forget specific conversations and remember grammatical patterns. When you develop wisdom, you need to forget specific experiences and remember general life lessons. This is where dreams and the nightly forgetting mechanism play a crucial but underappreciated role. During REM sleep, as your brain generates these impossible scenarios and then actively forgets them, it might be practicing the art of forgetting itself. Dreams might be a kind of gymnasium, where your brain exercises its ability to create and destroy, to imagine and forget, to explore and return. The content of dreams, those bizarre narratives that occasionally leak through into waking memory, might be less important than the process itself. The act of generating complex emotional but ultimately disposable experiences might be training your brain to distinguish between what's worth keeping and what needs to be released. It's practicing the delicate art of selective memory, the skill that underlies all learning and adaptation. This theory, sometimes called the synaptic homeostasis hypothesis, suggests that sleep and dreams serve to reset the brain's learning capacity. During waking hours, you're constantly forming new synaptic connections as you learn and experience. If this continued indefinitely, your brain would become oversaturated, like a sponge that's absorbed all the water it can hold. Sleep, particularly the forgetting mechanism active during REM, wrings out the sponge, preserving important information while clearing space for new learning. But the process is far more sophisticated than simple deletion. The brain appears to be identifying patterns across multiple memories, extracting the common elements while discarding the unique details. This is why sleep improves insight and problem solving. It's not just consolidating memories, it's distilling them, finding the essence while discarding the dross. Recent research has revealed that this distillation process involves a remarkable choreography of neural activity. During slow-wave sleep, the hippocampus replays recent memories at high speed, sometimes up to 20 times faster than the original experience. These compressed replays are broadcast to the cortex, where they're integrated with existing knowledge. Then, during REM sleep, the MCH neurons help prune away the unnecessary details while preserving the extracted patterns. Imagine watching a time-lapse video of a garden through the seasons. Individual flowers bloom and die, leaves grow and fall, but the overall pattern of growth and decay becomes clear. This is what your brain is doing with memories during sleep, creating time-lapse compressions that reveal patterns invisible in the moment-to-moment experience. This process has profound implications for education and learning. The traditional model of education, with its emphasis on memorizing facts and details, might be working against the brain's natural learning mechanisms. If the brain is designed to forget details in favor of patterns, then education should focus on exposing students to rich, varied experiences from which patterns can be extracted, rather than demanding the retention of specific information. Some progressive educators have begun incorporating this understanding into their teaching methods. Instead of testing students on specific facts immediately after learning, they're using spaced repetition with sleep intervals between learning sessions. Students learn a concept, sleep on it, then revisit it with variations. This approach works with rather than against the brain's natural forgetting and consolidation mechanisms. One particularly innovative program in Finland has students learn mathematical concepts through varied examples in the morning, engage in completely different activities in the afternoon, and then revisit the math with novel problems the next day. The students show better long-term retention and superior ability to apply concepts to new situations compared to traditional intensive study methods. They are essentially leveraging the nocturnal distillation process, allowing sleep to extract patterns from varied experiences. But let's return to that underground laboratory in Lyon, where another discovery was waiting that would link dreams, forgetting, and the very nature of time perception itself. The researchers noticed something odd in the brainwaves of volunteers who had been underground for more than 2 weeks. Their circadian rhythms, those roughly 24-hour cycles that govern sleep and waking, began to show unusual variations. But it wasn't just the timing that changed, it was the quality of time perception itself. During REM sleep, when the forgetting mechanism is most active, our perception of time becomes remarkably plastic. In dreams, you might experience hours, days, or even years in what clock time reveals as minutes. This isn't just subjective distortion. The brain is actually processing information in a fundamentally different temporal framework. The neurons that usually maintain temporal sequence, firing in ordered patterns that create our sense of time's arrow, begin firing in loops, spirals, and multi-directional patterns during dreams. One volunteer in the Lyon study, a physicist named Thomas, wore an EEG cap continuously for 3 weeks underground. The data from his brain revealed something extraordinary. During certain REM periods, his hippocampal neurons showed what researchers called temporal inversions, patterns suggesting his brain was processing events in reverse chronological order, not just remembering the past, but literally running the neural simulation of time backward. When Thomas woke from these reverse time dreams, he couldn't remember their content, thanks to the MCH neurons doing their job. But he reported a peculiar sensation, a feeling that time had become thick or viscous, as if he was moving through temporal honey. More remarkably, in the days following these reverse time REM periods, Thomas showed improved ability to solve physics problems that required thinking about time, symmetry, and reversible processes. This discovery led to a radical hypothesis. Dreams might be the brain's way of exploring counterfactual realities, not just what happened, but what could have happened, should have happened, or might yet happen. By running temporal simulations in multiple directions and then forgetting the specific content while retaining abstract insights, the brain might be building a more robust model of causality itself. Consider the implications. Every night your brain might be running alternative histories of your day, exploring how different choices would have led to different outcomes. It might be projecting forward into possible futures, then running those futures backward to understand what would need to happen to achieve or avoid them. All of this occurs below the threshold of consciousness, with the forgetting mechanism ensuring that these alternative timelines don't contaminate your memory of actual events. This could explain the peculiar temporal quality of dreams, where past, present, and future blend together, where you can be simultaneously a child and an adult, where deceased people are alive and future events have already occurred. Your brain isn't confused, it's exploring the full possibility space of temporal experience, using the freedom of dreams to transcend the linear prison of waking time. The researchers in Lyon discovered that this temporal exploration during dreams correlates with improved ability to plan, anticipate consequences, and understand complex causal relationships. People who showed more temporal inversions during REM sleep performed better on tasks requiring strategic thinking and long-term planning. It was as if their brains had practiced navigating time in all directions, making them better at understanding the relationship between cause and effect. But here's where the story takes an even more fascinating turn. The underground laboratory data revealed that the forgetting mechanism doesn't just erase dream content, it actively reorganizes temporal memories. When MCH neurons are active, they don't just weaken synaptic connections randomly. They show preference patterns, maintaining connections that link events causally while weakening connections that link events merely by temporal proximity. For example, imagine you have breakfast, then commute to work, then have an important meeting. The commute might take an hour, while breakfast and the meeting are separated by 2 hours. But the forgetting mechanism during sleep might weaken the memory of the commute while strengthening the connection between breakfast and the meeting if what you ate affected your performance. The brain is editing your temporal experience, creating a causal narrative from the raw footage of sequential events. This selective forgetting and reorganization might be essential for wisdom. Wisdom isn't just about remembering experiences, it's about understanding the deep patterns that connect causes and effects across long time spans. The elderly aren't necessarily wiser because they have more memories, but because their brains have had more time to distill those memories through thousands of nights of selective forgetting and pattern extraction. The Lyon researchers tested this hypothesis by studying sleep patterns across different age groups. They found that older adults who maintained good sleep quality, particularly robust REM sleep with active MCH neurons, showed better wisdom-related judgment than those with disrupted sleep, regardless of the total amount of life experience. It wasn't the accumulation of memories that created wisdom, but the nightly distillation process that extracted meaning from those memories. This understanding has profound implications for how we think about aging and cognitive decline. The sleep disruptions common in elderly populations might not just correlate with cognitive decline, they might cause it by interfering with the forgetting and reorganization mechanisms essential for maintaining coherent understanding of complex experiences. Protecting sleep quality in aging might be as important as any other intervention for maintaining cognitive health. The underground laboratory made one more discovery that deserves our attention, a finding that connects dreams, forgetting, and the nature of self itself. After weeks in isolation, volunteers began to report changes in their sense of identity. Not confusion or distress, but a kind of expansion, as if their sense of self had become more fluid and encompassing. Brain imaging revealed the neurological basis for these experiences. During extended stays underground, the default mode network, that collection of brain regions active during self-referential thinking, showed increased connectivity with areas usually excluded from it. The boundaries between self and other, between internal and external, became more permeable at the neural level. This increased connectivity was most pronounced during REM sleep, when the forgetting mechanism was most active. It was as if the MCH neurons, in their work of dismantling unnecessary memories, were also temporarily dismantling the rigid boundaries of self. The volunteers were forgetting not just their dreams, but the artificial constraints on identity that accumulate through daily experience. One volunteer, an artist named Maria, described it beautifully. She said that after 3 weeks underground, she felt like she'd been washed clean, not of memories but of accumulated assumptions about who she was supposed to be. She could still remember all the facts of her life, but the emotional weight of those facts, the way they constrained her sense of possibility, had been lightened. The forgetting mechanism had somehow freed her from the prison of fixed identity. This observation aligns with practices from contemplative traditions that use sleep deprivation or disruption to induce altered states of consciousness. But the Lyon research suggests something different. It's not the lack of sleep, but the enhancement of the forgetting mechanism that creates these expanded states of awareness. By spending extended time in an environment that optimizes sleep quality and particularly REM sleep, the volunteers were experiencing accelerated identity renewal. Every night, in smaller doses, we all experience this identity renovation. The person who wakes up is subtly different from the person who went to sleep, not just because of the passage of time, but because of the active neural processes that have selected, discarded, reorganized and integrated the experiences that constitute self. The forgetting mechanism isn't just editing memories, it's editing identity itself. This brings us to one of the most profound questions about dreams and forgetting. What is the relationship between the self that dreams and the self that wakes? Are they the same consciousness experiencing different states? Or are they different entities sharing the same neural substrate? The research from Lyon and other sleep laboratories suggests a third possibility. They might be different iterations of an evolving process, like successive drafts of a document being continuously revised. The dreaming self, unencumbered by the constraints of logic, physics, and consistent identity, explores the full possibility space of experience. The waking self, grounded in consensus reality and continuous narrative, provides stability and coherence. The forgetting mechanism mediates between these two modes, allowing insights from the dreaming self to influence the waking self without overwhelming it with impossible memories. This dynamic relationship between dreaming and waking consciousness, mediated by forgetting, might be what allows human consciousness to be both stable and creative, both grounded and imaginative, both rational and intuitive. We are not fixed entities, but processes, continuously created and recreated through cycles of experience, dream, and selective forgetting. As we've journeyed through these scientific discoveries, from Rebecca's inability to forget her dreams to the underground laboratory's exploration of temporal consciousness, a picture emerges of sleep and dreams as far more than just rest and random neural firing. They're active processes essential to learning, creativity, wisdom, and the maintenance of coherent identity. The forgetting mechanism, far from being a flaw or limitation, is perhaps the most sophisticated and important function of sleep. But our exploration wouldn't be complete without examining one more dimension of this phenomenon: the cultural and evolutionary history of how humans have understood and related to dreams and forgetting across time and cultures. This history reveals that many of the insights being discovered in modern sleep laboratories were intuited by ancient traditions, though expressed in different language and understood through different frameworks. In ancient Greece, the god of dreams was Morpheus, whose name gives us the word morphine, that substance that blurs the boundary between sleeping and waking, remembering and forgetting. But Morpheus had lesser-known siblings, Isalus, who created dreams of reality, and Phantasos, who created dreams of unreality. The Greeks understood that dreams came in different varieties, some worth remembering, others meant to be forgotten. The Greek philosophers had sophisticated theories about dreams and memory. Aristotle proposed that dreams were residual movements in the sense organs, like after images that persist when you close your eyes after looking at something bright. But he also recognized that dreams seemed to involve a different kind of thinking, what he called fantasia, imagination unmoored from sensory reality. He observed that we forget most dreams, but remember those that occur near waking, an observation confirmed by modern sleep science 2 millennia later. Plato went further, suggesting in his dialogue Theaetetus that dreams reveal the problem of knowledge itself. How can we know we're not dreaming right now? How can we trust memories that might be dreams? His solution was that true knowledge must be of unchanging forms, not the mutable experiences of either waking or dreaming. In a sense, Plato was arguing for a kind of forgetting, letting go of particular experiences in favour of universal truths. The ancient Indian tradition of yoga nidra, or yogic sleep, developed practices for maintaining awareness during the transition into sleep and dreams. Practitioners would learn to observe the dissolution of waking consciousness and the emergence of dream consciousness without losing awareness. They described states remarkably similar to what the Lyon laboratory volunteers experienced: expanded identity, fluid time perception, and the sensation of touching something beyond ordinary reality. But the yogis also emphasized the importance of returning fully to waking consciousness, of not becoming lost in the dream realm. They had practices for sealing the dream experience, ensuring that insights could cross into waking life without the confusion of dream memories contaminating reality perception. They seemed to intuitively understand the need for selective forgetting, though they framed it in terms of spiritual purification rather than neural mechanisms. In traditional Chinese medicine, dreams were understood as the wandering of the hun, the ethereal soul, while the po, the corporeal soul, remained with the body. Excessive dreaming or excessive dream recall was seen as pathological, a sign that the hun was not properly anchored. Treatments focused on calming the spirit and consolidating the connection between hun and po, essentially helping the forgetting mechanism function properly, though described in entirely different terms. The Chinese also recognized different types of dreams requiring different responses. Dreams from indigestion should be forgotten immediately. Dreams from emotional imbalance should be examined for their message, then released. Dreams of prophecy or wisdom should be remembered but not confused with waking reality. This taxonomy suggests sophisticated understanding of the need for selective memory and forgetting. Indigenous Australian cultures have the concept of dreamtime, a realm that exists parallel to waking reality and can be accessed through dreams, but also through ritual and art. Importantly, dreamtime isn't the past or the future, but an eternal present that underlies temporal reality. This conception aligns remarkably with the Lyon laboratory's discovery of non-linear time processing during REM sleep. But Aboriginal Australians also distinguish between different kinds of dreaming. There are personal dreams meant to be forgotten, teaching dreams meant to be shared, and sacred dreams that must be carefully interpreted by elders. The culture has elaborate protocols for determining which dreams deserve preservation in memory and cultural transmission, and which should be allowed to fade. It's a social forgetting mechanism that parallels the individual neural one. The Islamic tradition places great importance on dreams, with the Quran containing numerous references to prophetic dreams. But Islamic scholars also developed sophisticated criteria for distinguishing true dreams from false ones, meaningful visions from neural noise. They recognized that most dreams are what they called adgathu alam, confused dreams resulting from daily worries, food, or physical conditions. These should be forgotten. Only rare dreams that meet specific criteria deserve contemplation and memory. The Sufi mystic Ibn Arabi wrote extensively about the Alam al-Mithal, the imaginal realm accessed in dreams and mystical states. He described it as more real than physical reality, but less real than divine reality, an intermediate zone where forms are fluid and time is non-linear. His descriptions of consciousness in this realm, written in the 12th century, parallel modern accounts of REM sleep phenomenology with uncanny accuracy. Moving to the Americas, many Native American traditions use dreams as sources of power, wisdom, and identity. The Ojibwe tradition of dream catchers is often misunderstood in popular culture. The dream catcher doesn't catch dreams to preserve them, but filters them, allowing good dreams to pass through while trapping nightmares until they dissolve in the morning sun. It's a physical metaphor for the selective forgetting mechanism, manifested in craft and ritual. The Senoi people of Malaysia developed perhaps the most sophisticated cultural technology for working with dreams. Children are taught from an early age to share their dreams each morning, but more importantly, they're taught how to work with dream content. Nightmares are to be confronted and transformed. Gifts received in dreams must be shared in waking life. Conflicts in dreams must be resolved through waking action. The culture has essentially developed a social process for selectively integrating dream insights while preventing dream confusion. What's remarkable about the Senoi approach is that it seems to enhance the positive functions of dreaming while minimizing the negative. Anthropologists studying the Senoi reported unusually low levels of mental illness, violence, and social conflict. While we can't draw direct causal connections, it's intriguing that a culture with sophisticated practices for working with dreams and forgetting shows such positive social outcomes. The European alchemical tradition developed elaborate theories about dreams and memory, often encoded in symbolic language. The process of creating the philosopher's stone was sometimes described as a cycle of solvet coagula, dissolution and coagulation, which could be read as metaphor for the nightly dissolution of consciousness in dreams and its reconstitution in waking. The nigredo, or blackening phase, where all distinctions dissolve into prima materia, parallels the forgetting mechanism's dismantling of structured memories. Carl Jung, who studied alchemical texts extensively, developed a psychological theory that dreams compensate for the one-sidedness of waking consciousness. Dreams show us what we've forgotten or repressed, the shadow aspects of psyche that consciousness rejects. But Jung also emphasized the importance of integration rather than identification. We should learn from dreams without being overwhelmed by them, remember their lessons while forgetting their literal content. Jung student Marie-Louise von Franz went further, suggesting that dreams show us the process of individuation, the development of the self across time. Each dream is like a snapshot of an ongoing process, meaningful in context but not meant to be preserved in isolation. She compared it to watching a river. You see the patterns of flow without trying to hold on to individual water molecules. The modern West's relationship with dreams has been shaped significantly by Freud's interpretation of dreams as wish fulfillment and royal road to the unconscious. But Freud also recognized the importance of dream forgetting, what he called dream censorship. He saw it as repression, a pathological process, but we might reframe it as adaptive forgetting necessary for psychological health. What's striking about this cross-cultural survey is how universal certain insights appear to be. Virtually every culture recognizes that most dreams should be forgotten while some contain valuable information. Most distinguish between different types of dreams requiring different responses. Many have practices or technologies for selective integration of dream content. It's as if humanity has been intuitively aware of the forgetting mechanism and its importance for thousands of years. But modernity has disrupted our relationship with dreams and forgetting. Electric light has altered our sleep patterns, reducing total sleep time and particularly REM sleep. Digital devices keep us in a state of constant stimulation that makes the transition to sleep more difficult. We wake to alarms that yank us from REM sleep, disrupting the forgetting mechanism mid-process. We might be living in the most dream-deprived and paradoxically dream-confused era in human history. The consequences might be more severe than we realize. If the forgetting mechanism is essential for memory consolidation, emotional regulation, creativity and identity maintenance, then chronic disruption could contribute to the rising rates of mental illness, cognitive decline, and creative stagnation in modern societies. We might be inadvertently sabotaging one of our brain's most sophisticated and important functions. Some researchers have suggested that the modern epidemic of anxiety and depression might be partially explained by disrupted forgetting mechanisms. When we can't properly forget the day's stresses, when traumatic memories aren't properly processed and integrated, when our identity becomes rigid from lack of nightly renewal, psychological suffering follows. The cure isn't necessarily remembering more or forgetting more, but restoring the natural rhythm of selective forgetting. This brings us to practical implications for our daily lives. How can we support our brain's forgetting mechanism? How can we optimize the selective amnesia that allows for psychological health and creative insight? The research suggests several approaches, some obvious, others counterintuitive. First, and most obviously, protecting sleep quality and quantity is essential. This doesn't just mean getting enough hours of sleep, but ensuring those hours include adequate REM sleep when the forgetting mechanism is most active. This means avoiding alcohol and certain medications that suppress REM sleep, maintaining consistent sleep schedules that align with circadian rhythms, and creating sleep environments free from disruptions that might interrupt the forgetting process. But beyond basic sleep hygiene, there are more subtle practices that might enhance the forgetting mechanism's function. The Leon Underground laboratory findings suggest that periods of reduced sensory stimulation might allow the brain to more fully engage its forgetting and reorganization processes. This doesn't require an underground bunker. Regular periods of quiet reflection, meditation, or simply sitting in darkness might serve similar functions. The practice of dream journaling, popular in some circles, might need reconsideration. While recording particularly meaningful dreams can be valuable, obsessively trying to remember every dream might work against the forgetting mechanism's adaptive function. Perhaps a better practice is what we might call selective dream journaling, recording only those dreams that feel significant while consciously releasing the rest. There's also intriguing evidence that certain activities during waking hours can support the nocturnal forgetting process. Physical exercise, particularly aerobic exercise, seems to enhance sleep quality and the efficiency of memory, consolidation and forgetting. Creative activities like art, music or writing might prepare the brain for the creative explorations of REM sleep. Exposure to nature, with its complex but non-demanding sensory patterns, might facilitate the transition between focused and diffuse neural states. Diet might also play a role. The MCH neurons that promote forgetting are sensitive to metabolic signals. Extreme caloric restriction or excess might disrupt their function. Some research suggests that timing of meals, particularly avoiding heavy meals close to bedtime, can improve REM sleep quality and presumably the forgetting mechanism's function. But perhaps the most important practical implication concerns our attitude toward forgetting itself. In a culture obsessed with memory enhancement, productivity optimization, and constant documentation of experience, we might need to rehabilitate forgetting as not just acceptable, but essential. We need to recognize that forgetting is not failure, but function, not loss, but liberation. This doesn't mean becoming careless with important information or neglecting responsibilities. It means recognizing that selective forgetting is what allows us to extract meaning from experience, to grow beyond our past, to remain creative and adaptable. It means trusting the sophisticated neural mechanisms that have evolved over millions of years to manage the balance between remembering and forgetting. Consider how this perspective might change our approach to education, therapy, and personal development. Instead of trying to remember everything, we might focus on exposing ourselves to rich experiences and trusting the forgetting mechanism to extract relevant patterns. Instead of ruminating on past mistakes, we might practice conscious releasing, allowing the natural forgetting processes to integrate lessons while releasing unnecessary details. In therapy, instead of endlessly excavating and analysing past traumas, we might focus on creating new experiences that can compete with and eventually overshadow traumatic memories. This doesn't mean denial or repression, but rather working with the brain's natural forgetting mechanisms to reduce the emotional charge of difficult memories while preserving their informational content. The research on dreams and forgetting also suggests new approaches to creativity and problem solving. Instead of forcing solutions through concentrated effort, we might learn to pose questions before sleep and trust the nocturnal exploration process to generate insights. Instead of trying to remember every creative idea, we might allow most to fade while trusting that the important ones will persist or resurface. This brings us to a philosophical question that underlies all our explorations. What is the relationship between forgetting and freedom? If we remembered everything, every slight, every embarrassment, every loss, every mistake, would we be free to change, to grow, to become new versions of ourselves? Or would we be prisoners of accumulated history, unable to escape the weight of total recall? The case of Rebecca and others with disrupted forgetting mechanisms suggests that perfect memory is indeed a prison. But the Lyon laboratory research suggests something more profound. Forgetting might be the mechanism by which consciousness maintains its freedom. By selectively editing experience, by exploring impossible worlds and then forgetting them, by dissolving and reconstituting identity nightly, we remain capable of surprise, growth, and transformation. This is perhaps why dreams have fascinated humanity throughout history. They represent pure creative potential, unconstrained by logic or physics or consistent identity. That we forget them is not a bug but a feature, allowing us to touch infinite possibility without being overwhelmed by it. Dreams are consciousness at play, and forgetting is what allows us to return from play to the structured necessities of waking life. As we near the end of our journey through the science and philosophy of dreams and forgetting, let's return to where we began, with Rebecca in that Boston sleep clinic, unable to distinguish between 17,000 hours of dreams and her waking life. Her tragedy illuminates our gift, the ability to dream wildly and forget wisely, to explore impossible worlds and return safely to consensus reality. Every night we dissolve into dream, our coherent sense of self fragmenting into multiple perspectives, our logical mind surrendering to association and emotion, our memories mixing and recombining in novel patterns, and every morning the forgetting mechanism gently erases most of these nocturnal adventures, preserving only what serves our waking life. We wake refreshed not just because our bodies have rested, but because our minds have been renewed, unnecessary memories pruned away, emotional experiences integrated, creative solutions glimpsed even if not fully remembered. The poet John Keats wrote about negative capability, the ability to remain in uncertainty and doubt without irritably reaching after fact and reason. Dreams might be the ultimate expression of negative capability, a state where we tolerate, even embrace, contradiction, impossibility and mystery. And forgetting is what allows us to have this capability without losing our grounding in shared reality. As you prepare for sleep tonight, consider the remarkable journey your consciousness is about to undertake. You'll slip through hypnagogic hallucinations into the slow waves of deep sleep, where your brain will wash itself clean of metabolic debris. You'll cycle through stages, each serving different functions, consolidating memories, processing emotions, extracting patterns from noise. And then you'll enter REM sleep, that paradoxical state where your brain becomes as active as during waking while your body lies paralyzed except for darting eyes. You'll dream elaborate scenarios, experience impossible adventures, become different people, travel through time, fly through spaces that can't exist. Your emotional centers will blaze with activity while your logical prefrontal cortex sleeps, allowing you to experience pure feeling and association without the constraints of rational thought. All the while, those MCH neurons will be working their gentle magic, ensuring that most of these dream experiences fade upon waking, leaving only subtle influences, a lingering mood, a creative insight, a sense of having touched something profound but ineffable. You'll wake as yourself but subtly changed, your memories consolidated and organized, your emotions processed and integrated, your sense of self renewed through dissolution and reconstitution. This cycle will repeat every night for the rest of your life, each iteration slightly different, each contributing to the ongoing process of becoming who you are. You are not a fixed entity, but a process, continuously created through cycles of experience, dream, and forgetting. The you who wakes tomorrow will be both the same and different from the you who sleeps tonight, connected by memory but transformed by forgetting. Modern life, with its artificial lights, digital distractions, and constant demands for productivity, has disrupted these ancient rhythms. We sleep less than our ancestors, dream less, and perhaps most importantly, we've lost cultural wisdom about the importance of forgetting. We try to remember everything, document everything, optimize everything, not realizing that forgetting is not inefficiency but essential function. The science of dreams and forgetting suggests we might need to reconsider our relationship with consciousness itself. We are not memory machines designed to accumulate and preserve information. We are dynamic processes that create, destroy, and recreate ourselves nightly. Our consciousness is not a fixed spotlight but a flowing river, and forgetting is what keeps the water fresh and moving. The underground laboratory in Lyon revealed that when we optimize conditions for sleep and forgetting, remarkable things happen. Creativity increases, problem-solving improves, emotional resilience strengthens, and perhaps most remarkably, our sense of identity becomes more fluid and expansive. We don't lose ourselves through forgetting. We find new dimensions of self that were always potential but needed the dissolution of fixed patterns to emerge. This understanding has implications beyond individual psychology. If forgetting is essential for learning, creativity, and adaptation, then cultures and societies also need mechanisms for selective forgetting. The inability to let go of historical grievances, outdated traditions, or failed solutions might be a kind of cultural insomnia, preventing renewal and growth. Perhaps healthy societies, like healthy individuals, need cycles of remembering and forgetting, preservation and renewal. But we must be careful not to romanticize forgetting or demonize memory. The goal is not amnesia but balance, not erasure but integration. The forgetting mechanism is sophisticated precisely because it's selective, preserving what serves while releasing what constrains. The wisdom lies not in forgetting everything or remembering everything, but in trusting the evolved mechanisms that manage this balance. As research continues, we're likely to discover even more about the role of dreams and forgetting in consciousness, creativity, and health. Already, new technologies are being developed that can enhance or suppress specific aspects of sleep and forgetting. We might soon have the ability to selectively enhance certain types of dreams, to strengthen or weaken specific memories during sleep, to optimize the forgetting mechanism for particular outcomes. These technologies raise ethical questions. If we can control what we forget, who decides what should be forgotten? If we can enhance creative dreams, do we risk losing the natural balance between dreaming and waking? If we can eliminate nightmares, do we also eliminate their potential adaptive function? As with any powerful technology, the ability to manipulate dreams and forgetting will require wisdom about when and how to use it. But perhaps the most important insight from all this research is also the simplest. Sleep and dreams are not passive states where nothing important happens. They're active processes essential to who we are and who we become. The 8 hours we spend asleep each night are not lost time, but transformation time. Not unconsciousness, but a different kind of consciousness. Not absence, but presence to dimensions of experience unavailable to waking awareness. The next time you wake with the fading echo of a dream, that bittersweet sense of having experienced something meaningful that's already dissolving, remember that this forgetting is not loss but gift. Your brain is protecting you from the confusion of remembering impossible experiences while preserving any insights they might have generated. You're witnessing the forgetting mechanism in action, that sophisticated neural editor that allows you to dream wildly and wake wisely. And if you're one of those people who claims to never remember dreams, who wakes each morning with no memory of nocturnal adventures, don't assume you're missing something important. Your forgetting mechanism might simply be more efficient than average, more thoroughly erasing dream content to prevent any contamination of waking memory. You're still dreaming, still exploring impossible worlds, still benefiting from the creative and integrative functions of REM sleep. The forgetting is so complete that you don't even remember forgetting. On the other hand, if you're someone who remembers vivid dreams regularly, you're glimpsing the usually hidden processes of consciousness at play. Your forgetting mechanism might be slightly less aggressive, allowing more dream content to cross the threshold into waking memory. This can be a source of creativity and insight, as long as you maintain clear boundaries between dream experience and waking reality. The variation in dream recall among individuals might reflect different evolutionary strategies, different balances between exploration and stability, creativity and groundedness. Just as genetic diversity strengthens a species, cognitive diversity, including different patterns of dreaming and forgetting, might strengthen human communities. We need both the vivid dreamers who bring creative insights and the efficient forgetters who maintain practical stability. As we conclude this exploration, let's consider one final dimension of dreams and forgetting: their role in confronting mortality. Every night, consciousness dissolves into something resembling death, and every morning it reconstitutes into something resembling rebirth. This nightly cycle might be practice for the ultimate letting go, the final forgetting that awaits us all. Many spiritual traditions have recognized this connection between sleep and death, dreams and the afterlife, forgetting and liberation. The Tibetan Book of the Dead describes the bardo, the intermediate state between death and rebirth, in terms remarkably similar to dream experience. Hindu philosophy speaks of deep sleep as touching turiya, the fourth state beyond waking, dreaming and sleeping, where individual consciousness merges with universal consciousness. Perhaps our nightly journey through sleep and dreams, our regular experience of consciousness dissolving and reforming, is preparation for larger cycles of existence. The forgetting mechanism that allows us to release each day's accumulated experience might be teaching us to eventually release life itself, not in a morbid way, but as a natural completion of a process that has been practicing dissolution and reconstitution every night. This perspective might change how we relate to both sleep and death. Instead of seeing sleep as a minor death to be avoided or minimized, we might see it as a gift that allows us to practice transformation. Instead of fearing the forgetting that comes with aging, we might recognize it as a natural progression of the same mechanism that has been renewing us nightly throughout our lives. The research on dreams and forgetting ultimately points to a profound truth about the nature of consciousness. We are not things but processes, not nouns but verbs, not beings but becomings. Every night we dissolve into potential and reform into actuality. Every dream we forget makes space for new possibilities. Every morning we wake slightly different from who we went to sleep as, changed by journeys we don't remember through worlds that never existed. This is the gift of forgetting, the wisdom of dreams, the miracle of sleep. We are continuously created and recreated through cycles of consciousness and unconsciousness, memory and forgetting, logic and imagination. The person listening to these words is both permanent and temporary, continuous and discontinuous, remembered and forgotten. As you drift towards sleep tonight, as your brain begins its nightly choreography of waves and stages, as the forgetting mechanism prepares to edit your experiences and dreams, prepare to bloom in impossible gardens, remember that you're participating in one of nature's most sophisticated and beautiful processes. You're not just resting but transforming, not just sleeping but exploring, not just dreaming but touching the infinite creativity that underlies consciousness itself. And when you wake tomorrow, even if you remember nothing of your nocturnal adventures, trust that the forgetting has served its purpose. You'll be refreshed, not just in body but in mind, not just rested but renewed. The you who wakes will be both the same and different, connected to yesterday by memory but freed from its complete weight by forgetting. This is the paradox and the promise of consciousness. We can only remain ourselves by regularly ceasing to be ourselves. We can only remember by forgetting. We can only stay sane by nightly going beautifully, temporarily mad in dreams. The MCH neurons will do their work. The hippocampus will consolidate and transfer. The default mode network will update its model of self, and you will emerge tomorrow morning as the latest version of an ongoing process that has been running since your first breath and will continue until your last. Some researchers believe that in the future we might develop technologies to selectively enhance or suppress different aspects of sleep and dreams. We might be able to boost creativity by enhancing REM sleep, improve learning by optimizing slow-wave sleep, or treat psychological disorders by modulating the forgetting mechanism. But we should approach such technologies with humility, recognizing that we're interfering with processes refined over millions of years of evolution. The story of Rebecca, who couldn't forget her dreams, stands as a warning about the unintended consequences of disrupting natural forgetting. What seems like an enhancement, perfect memory of dreams, turned out to be a curse. Similarly, attempts to optimize sleep and dreams might have unexpected costs. The balance between remembering and forgetting, between dreaming and waking, between exploration and stability, has been calibrated by evolution for reasons we might not fully understand. This doesn't mean we shouldn't study and potentially enhance these processes, but we should do so with respect for their complexity and wisdom. The brain mechanisms that create dreams and promote forgetting are not flaws to be fixed, but sophisticated solutions to the challenges of consciousness. They allow us to be both stable and creative, both grounded and imaginative, both continuous and capable of change. The underground laboratory in Lyon, with its discoveries about hyperdimensional exploration, temporal inversion, and identity fluidity during dreams, suggests that we've only begun to understand the full significance of what happens during sleep. Future research might reveal even more profound connections between dreams, consciousness, and the nature of reality itself. Some physicists have speculated that consciousness might be fundamental to the universe, not emerging from matter but underlying it. If this is true, then dreams might be windows into dimensions of consciousness that transcend the physical. The impossible geometries explored by place cells during REM sleep, the backward flowing time experienced in certain dreams, the dissolution of self-boundaries, these might not be mere neural noise, but glimpses of consciousness freed from the constraints of physical embodiment. This is speculative, of course, but it points to the profound mystery that remains at the heart of sleep and dreams. We spend a third of our lives in this altered state, experiencing adventures we mostly forget, transforming in ways we don't consciously understand. Yet this mysterious process is essential to our health, creativity, learning, and perhaps our very consciousness. As we continue to study sleep and dreams, new questions emerge faster than answers. Why do some people naturally need less sleep than others? What determines the content of dreams beyond daily residue and emotional processing? How does the brain decide which memories to strengthen and which to weaken during sleep? What is the relationship between dreams and creativity at the neural level? These questions drive ongoing research that continues to reveal the sophisticated nature of sleep processes. Recent studies have begun exploring the role of dreams in social cognition and empathy. Researchers at the University of California, Berkeley, discovered that REM sleep, particularly the dreaming phase, enhances our ability to read facial expressions and understand emotional nuance. People deprived of REM sleep showed decreased accuracy in identifying subtle emotional expressions and reduced activity in brain regions associated with empathy. This suggests that dreams might serve a social function, allowing us to practice and refine our understanding of others' emotional states. In dreams, we often experience events from multiple perspectives, sometimes simultaneously being ourselves and observing ourselves, sometimes becoming other people entirely. This perspective taking might be training our capacity for empathy and theory of mind, the ability to understand that others have thoughts and feelings different from our own. The forgetting mechanism plays a crucial role here too. If we remembered every dream interaction as vividly as real social encounters, we might develop false memories of social experiences that never occurred. The selective forgetting ensures that the emotional and social learning from dreams can influence our waking social cognition without creating confusion about actual social history. Consider how this relates to the modern epidemic of loneliness and social isolation. If dreams help us maintain and develop social cognitive abilities, then sleep deprivation might contribute not just to individual psychological problems, but to broader social dysfunction. People who are chronically sleep deprived might literally lose some of their capacity for empathy and social understanding, creating a vicious cycle of isolation and further sleep disruption. This brings us to another fascinating area of research: the role of dreams in moral development and decision-making. Studies have shown that people who get adequate REM sleep show better moral reasoning and more consistent ethical behavior. This isn't just because they're less tired and irritable. The dreaming brain appears to be running ethical simulations, exploring the consequences of different choices in a safe, consequence-free environment. In dreams, we often face moral dilemmas without our usual rational constraints. We might steal, lie, or hurt others, experiencing the emotional consequences without real-world harm. We might also act heroically, experiencing the emotional rewards of courage and sacrifice. These dream experiences, even though mostly forgotten, might calibrate our moral intuitions and emotional responses to ethical situations. The philosopher Thomas Nagel once asked what it's like to be a bat, pointing to the seemingly unbridgeable gap between different forms of consciousness. But in dreams, we regularly become other beings, experiencing non-human perspectives that would be impossible in waking life. We fly like birds, swim like fish, sometimes become animals or even inanimate objects. These dream experiences, processed through the forgetting mechanism, might expand our capacity for perspective taking beyond what rational thought alone could achieve. This expansion of perspective might be particularly important for creativity and innovation. Many breakthrough innovations involve seeing familiar problems from radically new perspectives. The ability to temporarily abandon our usual viewpoint, cultivated nightly in dreams, might be essential for the kind of thinking that produces paradigm shifts in science, art, and technology. The Leon Underground Laboratory made another discovery that deserves deeper exploration. They found that people who spent extended time in the facility showed increased cognitive flexibility upon returning to normal life. They performed better on tasks requiring them to switch between different rule sets, to find multiple solutions to problems, and to abandon unsuccessful strategies in favour of new approaches. This cognitive flexibility correlated with specific patterns of brain activity during REM sleep. The volunteers who showed the most improvement had more frequent transitions between different neural states during dreams, as if their brains were practicing rapid adaptation to changing circumstances. The forgetting mechanism seemed to be preventing these practice sessions from creating cognitive confusion, while allowing the flexibility training to transfer to waking cognition. This has implications for education and professional development. Instead of viewing sleep as time away from learning, we might recognize it as an essential component of the learning process. The cognitive flexibility developed through dreaming and selective forgetting might be just as important as the knowledge acquired through study. Students who sacrifice sleep for more study time might be undermining the very cognitive abilities that would allow them to use their knowledge creatively. The relationship between sleep, dreams, and creativity deserves special attention. While we've mentioned several famous examples of creative insights arising from dreams, the mechanism deserves deeper exploration. Creativity requires two seemingly opposed capacities: the ability to generate novel combinations and the ability to recognize valuable insights among the noise. Dreams excel at the first, generating endless novel combinations unconstrained by logic or physical law. The forgetting mechanism might be crucial for the second, filtering out the noise while preserving valuable insights. Research has shown that creative individuals don't necessarily remember more dreams than others, but they show different patterns of forgetting. Their MCH neurons show more variable activity, sometimes allowing dream content to persist longer in memory, sometimes erasing it more completely. It's as if their forgetting mechanism is more selective, better at distinguishing between creative signal and random noise. This selective forgetting might be trainable. Artists and writers who regularly engage with their dreams, not trying to remember everything but learning to recognize and preserve valuable insights, might be training their forgetting mechanism to be more discriminating. This isn't about remembering more, but about forgetting more strategically. The connection between dreams and time perception opens up even more intriguing possibilities. The discovery that the brain processes time non-linearly during dreams, sometimes running simulations backward, suggests that our normal experience of time as flowing uniformly from past to future might be just one possible configuration of consciousness. In dreams, we regularly experience what physicists call closed time-like curves, situations where cause and effect become circular or reversed. We might dream of consequences before causes, experience the end of stories before their beginning, or live entire lifetimes in minutes. While physics suggests such experiences are impossible in space-time as we understand it, consciousness seems unconstrained by these limitations. This might not be just random neural firing, but serve an adaptive function. By experiencing time non-linearly in dreams, we might develop better intuition about complex causal relationships that unfold over long timescales. Climate scientists, for instance, need to think about feedback loops and delayed consequences that span decades or centuries. The kind of non-linear temporal thinking practiced in dreams might be essential for understanding such complex systems. The forgetting mechanism ensures that these non-linear temporal experiences don't confuse our waking understanding of causality. We wake with our arrow of time intact, able to function in a world where cause precedes effect, but the subtle influence of dream time might enhance our ability to think about complex temporal relationships, to imagine long-term consequences, to understand circular causality. This brings us to the relationship between dreams, forgetting, and wisdom. Wisdom isn't just accumulated knowledge, but the ability to see patterns across different domains, to understand deep principles that transcend specific situations. The nightly process of dream generation and selective forgetting might be essential for developing wisdom. Every night your brain takes the specific experiences of the day and processes them through the lens of everything you've previously learned. Dreams mix and match experiences across different times and contexts, finding unexpected connections and patterns. The forgetting mechanism then erases the specific dream content while preserving extracted patterns and insights. Over years and decades, this process distills experience into wisdom. This might explain why wisdom often seems to emerge later in life, not just from having more experiences, but from having processed those experiences through thousands of cycles of dreaming and forgetting. The elderly person who seems wise beyond their explicit memories might be displaying the accumulated product of a lifetime of nocturnal pattern extraction. But modern life might be interfering with this wisdom development process. Chronic sleep deprivation, particularly the reduction in REM sleep common in middle age and beyond, might be preventing the full development of wisdom. We might be creating societies with vast knowledge but limited wisdom, information rich but pattern poor. The role of dreams in processing trauma adds another layer to our understanding. Traditional approaches to trauma often focus on remembering and processing traumatic events. But the research on forgetting mechanisms suggests a different approach might sometimes be more effective. The goal might not be to remember trauma more clearly, but to allow the natural forgetting mechanism to gradually reduce its emotional intensity while preserving its informational content. REM sleep behavior disorder, where people physically act out their dreams, has provided a unique window into this process. Researchers noticed that people with this disorder who had experienced trauma often physically acted out scenarios related to their traumatic experiences, but with variations. They might fight back against an attacker who in reality had overpowered them, or escape from a situation where they had been trapped. These dream enactments seem to be the brain attempting to process and master traumatic experiences. The normal paralysis of REM sleep would keep these scenarios purely mental, but seeing them acted out reveals the brain's attempt to explore alternative responses to trauma. The forgetting mechanism then selectively preserves the mastery experiences while weakening the traumatic memories. This understanding has led to new therapeutic approaches that work with rather than against the forgetting mechanism. Instead of repeatedly revisiting traumatic memories, which might actually strengthen them, these approaches focus on creating new, positive experiences that can compete with traumatic memories for neural resources. Sleep, particularly REM sleep with its active forgetting mechanism, then naturally weakens the traumatic memories while strengthening the new, positive ones. The discovery of MCH neurons and their role in forgetting has also shed light on neurodegenerative diseases. Alzheimer's disease, for instance, involves not just memory loss but disruption of the normal balance between remembering and forgetting. The disease might involve both excessive forgetting of important information and insufficient forgetting of neural noise. Early-stage Alzheimer's often involves sleep disruption, particularly reduction in REM sleep and slow-wave sleep. This might not just be a symptom, but a contributing cause. Without proper sleep architecture and functioning forgetting mechanisms, the brain can't properly consolidate memories or clear metabolic waste. The result is a vicious cycle where sleep disruption leads to cognitive decline, which further disrupts sleep. This understanding suggests that protecting sleep quality might be one of the most important interventions for preventing or slowing neurodegenerative diseases. Not just getting enough sleep, but ensuring that sleep includes proper cycles of different stages, each serving its function in the complex choreography of remembering and forgetting. The relationship between dreams and consciousness raises profound questions about the nature of reality itself. If consciousness can generate entirely convincing realities in dreams, complete with sensory experiences, emotions, and narratives, what does this say about the reality we experience while awake? Is waking reality just a more constrained, consensus-based dream? Some philosophers and cognitive scientists have suggested that waking consciousness is indeed a kind of controlled hallucination, with sensory input constraining but not determining our experience. The brain is constantly generating predictions about reality, and sensory input serves mainly to correct errors in these predictions. Dreams might be what happens when this predictive process runs without sensory constraint. If this is true, then the forgetting mechanism isn't just editing memories but helping maintain the distinction between internal prediction and external reality. People like Rebecca, who can't forget their dreams, might be experiencing a breakdown in this distinction, unable to separate internally generated predictions from externally constrained perceptions. This perspective has implications for understanding psychiatric conditions like schizophrenia, which might involve disruption of the mechanisms that normally distinguish internal predictions from external perceptions. The hallucinations and delusions of schizophrenia might be waking dreams that the brain mistakenly treats as sensory input. Understanding the forgetting mechanism might lead to new treatments that help restore the boundary between internal and external reality. The cultural dimensions of dreaming and forgetting reveal how profoundly these processes shape human society. Every culture has developed practices, rituals, and beliefs around dreams, suggesting their universal importance. But modern Western culture is unusual in its dismissal of dreams as meaningless neural noise. This dismissal might be costing us more than we realize. Cultures that maintain rich dream practices often show different patterns of psychological health and social cohesion. The Senoi of Malaysia, with their elaborate dream-sharing rituals, have remarkably low rates of violence and mental illness. The Aboriginal Australians, with their concept of dreamtime as parallel reality, maintain cultural continuity across thousands of years. These cultures haven't just preserved ancient traditions, they've maintained technologies for working with consciousness that we're only beginning to understand scientifically. The modern scientific understanding of dreams and forgetting might allow us to develop new cultural practices that combine ancient wisdom with contemporary knowledge. We might create educational systems that recognize the importance of sleep for learning, workplaces that support healthy sleep patterns, and therapeutic approaches that work with natural forgetting mechanisms rather than against them. As we look to the future, several frontiers in dream and sleep research promise to further transform our understanding. Advances in brain imaging allow us to decode dream content in real time, potentially allowing communication with dreaming subjects. Optogenetics, the use of light to control genetically modified neurons, might allow precise manipulation of sleep stages and forgetting mechanisms. Brain-computer interfaces might eventually allow us to record and replay dreams, though the wisdom of doing so remains questionable. These technological possibilities raise profound ethical questions. If we can control what we dream and what we forget, who decides what dreams are appropriate and what memories should be preserved? If we can share dreams directly between brains, what happens to individual identity? If we can enhance the creative aspects of dreaming while suppressing nightmares, do we risk losing something essential about human experience? The story of Rebecca reminds us that what seems like enhancement can become curse. Her inability to forget dreams seemed like it might be advantageous, giving her access to thousands of hours of additional experience. Instead, it left her unable to distinguish reality from dream, overwhelmed by fictional memories that competed with real ones. As we develop technologies to manipulate dreams and forgetting, we must remember that these processes evolved for good reasons. The wisdom might lie not in controlling dreams and forgetting, but in understanding and supporting their natural function. This means protecting sleep quality in our always-on society, respecting the need for mental downtime, and recognizing that forgetting is not failure but essential function. It means understanding that we are not machines designed to maximize productivity and memory, but biological beings who need cycles of activity and rest, remembering and forgetting logic and dream. As research continues, we're discovering that sleep and dreams are even more important than we imagined. They're not just about physical rest or memory consolidation, but about maintaining the flexibility and creativity of consciousness itself. The 8 hours we spend sleeping each night are not lost productivity, but essential maintenance of our most sophisticated capacities: creativity, empathy, wisdom, and the ability to adapt to an ever-changing world. The journey we've taken tonight, from Rebecca's curse of remembering all her dreams to the underground laboratory's discoveries about consciousness and time, from ancient dream wisdom to cutting-edge neuroscience, reveals the profound mystery that remains at the heart of human experience. We are beings who spend a third of our lives in an altered state of consciousness, creating and destroying entire worlds, exploring impossible realities, and then forgetting most of these adventures. This forgetting is not loss but liberation. It allows us to remain grounded in consensus reality while benefiting from the creative explorations of dreams. It enables us to maintain coherent identity while continuously evolving. It lets us accumulate wisdom without being overwhelmed by memory. The forgetting mechanism, those MCH neurons working quietly through the night, might be the unsung heroes of human consciousness. As you prepare for sleep after hearing these words, you might wonder what dreams await you tonight. What impossible worlds will your brain create? What temporal inversions will your hippocampus explore? What emotional scenarios will your limbic system generate? And most mysteriously, what will you forget and what subtle influences will remain? You won't remember most of tonight's dreams, and that's exactly as it should be. The forgetting mechanism will do its work, erasing the impossible while preserving the insightful, dismantling the fictional while strengthening the meaningful. You'll wake tomorrow refreshed not just in body but in mind, your consciousness renewed through its nightly journey into dream and back. This cycle is repeated every night of your life and will continue until your final sleep. Each night you dissolve into dream, touching dimensions of experience unavailable to waking consciousness. Each morning you reconstitute, emerging as the latest version of an ongoing process that began before you could remember and will continue as long as consciousness persists. Perhaps this nightly dissolution and reconstitution is practice for larger cycles of existence. Many spiritual traditions speak of death and rebirth, of consciousness persisting through transformations that transcend individual identity. Whether or not such ideas reflect literal truth, our nightly journey through sleep and dreams gives us experiential knowledge of consciousness dissolving and reforming, of identity fluid yet continuous. The science of sleep and dreams ultimately points to a view of human consciousness as far more fluid, creative and mysterious than everyday experience suggests. We are not fixed entities navigating a solid reality, but dynamic processes co-creating experience through prediction, perception, memory and imagination. Dreams reveal the creative capacity of consciousness unconstrained, while forgetting maintains the coherence necessary for shared reality. Every human who has ever lived has experienced this nightly transformation, this journey into dream and return. It's one of the few truly universal human experiences, transcending culture, era, and individual differences. The pharaohs of ancient Egypt dreamed and forgot. The first humans to leave Africa dreamed and forgot. Your ancestors, stretching back through countless generations, all knew the dissolution of consciousness in sleep and its reconstitution in waking. Yet, despite this universality, or perhaps because of it, we've only recently begun to understand the sophisticated neuroscience underlying these experiences. The discovery of REM sleep is less than a century old. The identification of MCH neurons and their role in forgetting is barely a decade old. We're still in the early stages of understanding processes that have shaped human consciousness since its emergence. What future discoveries await? Perhaps we'll find that dreams serve functions we haven't yet imagined. Perhaps we'll discover that the forgetting mechanism is even more sophisticated than current research suggests. Perhaps we'll learn that consciousness itself depends on the cycle of dreaming and forgetting in ways we're only beginning to glimpse. For now, we can appreciate the profound gift of our nightly journey into dream and forgetting. We can protect our sleep knowing it's not just rest but renewal. We can respect our dreams, recognizing them as consciousness at play, and we can embrace forgetting, understanding it not as loss but as the price of remaining adaptive, creative and sane in a complex world. The woman named Rebecca, cursed with remembering all her dreams, eventually found a kind of peace with her condition. She learned to tag her memories, developing an internal system for distinguishing dream from reality. She became, in a sense, a curator of her own consciousness, managing a collection that included both real and fictional experiences. Her case remains unique in the medical literature, a window into what happens when the forgetting mechanism fails. But Rebecca also reported unexpected gifts from her condition. She had access to creative resources others could only glimpse. She could revisit dreams from decades past, finding patterns and connections invisible to those of us who forget. She became a kind of dream archaeologist, excavating layers of consciousness that, for most of us, dissolve upon waking. In her later years, Rebecca worked with researchers to document her dream memories, creating an unprecedented record of a lifetime of dreams. This archive has become a valuable resource for understanding the patterns and evolution of dream content across a human lifespan. It reveals that dreams aren't random but show clear developmental patterns, with certain themes and structures evolving predictably across decades. Childhood dreams, Rebecca's archive revealed, tend to be simpler in structure but more intense in emotion. Adolescent dreams show increasing social complexity and identity exploration. Adult dreams become more elaborate in narrative but often less vivid in sensory detail, and elderly dreams, intriguingly, sometimes return to the emotional intensity of childhood while maintaining adult complexity. These patterns, invisible to those of us who forget our dreams, suggest that dreaming serves different functions across the lifespan. The intense, simple dreams of childhood might be establishing basic emotional and cognitive categories. The complex social dreams of adolescence might be preparing for adult relationships. The narrative-rich dreams of adulthood might be integrating complex experiences into coherent life stories. And the intense yet complex dreams of old age might be preparing for life's final transition. Rebecca's unique burden thus became an unexpected gift to science, providing insights that couldn't have been gained any other way. Her curse of remembering illuminated the wisdom of forgetting while also revealing the hidden patterns in a lifetime of dreams. She passed away at age 82, her final words reportedly being that she was curious to discover whether death would finally bring the forgetting that life had denied her. The researchers who studied Rebecca's brain after her death found structural differences that helped explain her condition. Her MCH neurons were present, but showed unusual connectivity patterns, as if the wiring that should have promoted forgetting instead preserved dream memories. Interestingly, other brain regions showed us adaptations, suggesting her brain had partially compensated for the lack of normal forgetting. These adaptations might point toward the possibility of enhancing certain aspects of dream recall without the devastating consequences Rebecca experienced. If we could selectively preserve certain dream insights while maintaining normal forgetting of dream narratives, we might access creative resources currently lost to amnesia. This remains a distant possibility, but Rebecca's case suggests it might not be impossible. As we approach the end of our exploration, let's consider the practical implications of everything we've discovered. How can we apply this understanding of dreams and forgetting to live healthier, more creative, more fulfilling lives? The research suggests several principles that might guide us. First, prioritize sleep not as luxury but as necessity. The forgetting mechanism and all the associated processes of memory, consolidation, emotional regulation, and creative exploration require adequate sleep to function properly. This doesn't mean obsessing about perfect sleep, but recognizing that chronic sleep deprivation has consequences beyond simple tiredness. Second, respect the natural rhythms of consciousness. The cycle of focused attention and diffuse awareness, the remembering and forgetting of logic and imagination, is not inefficiency but sophisticated design. Working with these rhythms rather than against them might enhance both productivity and creativity. Third, cultivate a healthy relationship with forgetting. In a culture that valorizes memory and documentation, remember that forgetting is not failure but function. Let go of the need to remember everything, trusting that your brain will preserve what's important while releasing what's not. Fourth, pay attention to your dreams without obsessing over them. The occasional dream that persists into waking might carry valuable insights or emotional information, but don't feel obligated to remember or analyze every dream. Trust the wisdom of the forgetting mechanism to filter signal from noise. Fifth, recognize that creativity and problem-solving often happen below the threshold of consciousness. The solution that appears suddenly after sleep, the insight that emerges during relaxation, the creative breakthrough that seems to come from nowhere. These might be the products of unconscious processing during dreams and the selective preservation of insights through the forgetting mechanism. Sixth, understand that psychological health depends on the balance between stability and change, remembering and forgetting, continuity and transformation. Neither perfect memory nor complete amnesia would be psychologically healthy. The sophisticated dance between preservation and release is what allows us to remain ourselves while continuing to grow. Finally, appreciate the profound mystery that remains at the heart of consciousness. Despite all our scientific advances, we still don't fully understand how the brain generates experience, why we dream what we dream, or what consciousness itself actually is. The nightly journey into dream and back reminds us that we're participating in something far more mysterious and wonderful than we usually recognize. As this exploration draws to a close, and as you yourself might be drawing closer to sleep, let's take a moment to appreciate the remarkable journey your consciousness is about to undertake. In the coming hours, your brain will cycle through stages of sleep, each serving crucial functions. You'll dream elaborate scenarios that feel completely real in the moment. MCH neurons will carefully edit these experiences, preserving insights while erasing confusion. You'll wake tomorrow having travelled through impossible worlds, explored non-linear time, experienced emotions that don't exist in waking life, and touched dimensions of consciousness unavailable to your rational mind. Almost all of this will be forgotten, erased by mechanisms designed to protect your sanity and enhance your creativity. But you will be subtly changed, renewed, refreshed in ways that go far beyond simple rest. This is the gift of sleep, the wisdom of dreams, the mercy of forgetting. Every night we are given the opportunity to dissolve and reconstitute, to explore and return, to touch infinity and wake grounded in finite reality. We are not trapped in fixed patterns, but continuously renewed through cycles of creation and destruction, memory and forgetting, dream and waking. The story of humanity is in many ways the story of consciousness exploring its own nature, and dreams have always been central to this exploration. From ancient shamans inducing dream states to modern scientists mapping neural activity during REM sleep, we've been trying to understand these nightly journeys into otherness. Each generation discovers new layers of meaning and mechanism, yet the mystery remains, perhaps deepens. What we've learned from Rebecca's inability to forget her dreams, from the underground laboratory's discoveries about time and identity, from the identification of MCH neurons and their role in forgetting, is that dreams and their forgetting are not peripheral to consciousness, but central to its function. We are who we are not despite forgetting our dreams, but because we forget them. The forgetting allows us to dream wildly without losing touch with reality. It enables us to explore impossible worlds while remaining grounded in the possible. It lets us dissolve identity while maintaining continuity. It permits us to touch the infinite while living in the finite. Without the forgetting mechanism, we would be like Rebecca, lost in a maze of real and unreal memories, unable to distinguish the actual from the imagined. So tonight, as you lay your head upon your pillow and feel consciousness beginning its familiar fade, remember that you are about to embark on a journey that millions of years of evolution have refined into one of nature's most sophisticated processes. Your brain will generate experiences beyond the constraints of physical reality. You'll become different people, travel through non-existent spaces, experience impossible events. And then, through the elegant action of forgetting, most of these experiences will dissolve, leaving only subtle influences, extracted patterns, integrated emotions, and occasional creative insights. You'll wake as yourself but renewed, the same but different, continuous but transformed. This is the miracle that happens every night, so common we rarely appreciate its profundity. Sweet dreams, fellow traveller in consciousness. May your sleep be deep, your dreams be rich, and your forgetting be wise. May you wake tomorrow refreshed not just in body but in spirit, renewed through your journey into the impossible and your safe return to the real. And may you carry with you, even if you don't consciously remember, the insights and integrations that your dreaming mind discovered in the spaces between what is and what might be. The ancient Greeks had a saying, "The unexamined life is not worth living." But perhaps equally true is that the undreamed life is not fully lived. We need both examination and dream, logic and imagination, remembering and forgetting. The balance between these opposites, maintained through the sophisticated neural mechanisms we've explored tonight, is what allows consciousness to flourish in all its complexity and beauty. As research continues to unveil the mechanisms of sleep and dreams, we'll undoubtedly discover new layers of complexity and function. But no matter how much we learn, something essential about dreams will likely remain mysterious. They are, after all, consciousness exploring its own depths, awareness aware of itself in ways that transcend ordinary experience. The mystery is not a problem to be solved, but a gift to be appreciated. And so we end where we began, with the recognition that every night we slip into worlds where the laws of physics bend to imagination, where the dead speak again, where we live entire lifetimes that vanish like morning mist. We journey through impossible landscapes, experience non-existent emotions, become people we're not and never could be, and then we forget, not because our memory is weak, but because forgetting is the price of sanity, creativity, and growth. This forgetting is not loss but liberation, not failure but function, not emptiness but space for new possibility. It's the gift that allows us to dream without drowning, to explore without losing our way home, to touch the infinite without losing the finite, to change while remaining ourselves. Tomorrow night and every night for the rest of your life, you'll repeat this journey. You'll dissolve into dream and reconstitute in waking, forget the impossible and remember the essential, explore the infinite and return to the finite. Each cycle will be unique yet part of a pattern stretching back to your first sleep and forward to your last. This is your inheritance as a conscious being, your nightly ticket to dimensions of experience beyond waking's reach. Use it well, trust its wisdom, and remember, even as you forget your dreams, that forgetting itself is one of consciousness's most profound gifts. And so, dear friend, we arrive at the gentle close of tonight's journey through the hidden architecture of sleep and memory. We've travelled from Rebecca's burden of remembering 17,000 hours of dreams to the underground laboratories where consciousness itself bends and reshapes. We've discovered those remarkable MCH neurons, nature's gentle editors, carefully curating which experiences deserve preservation and which must dissolve into the mist of forgetting. As you prepare for your own nightly journey into dream, remember that the you who wakes tomorrow will be both the same and wonderfully different, renewed through dissolution and reconstitution, refreshed through forgetting as much as through rest. Your brain will spend tonight exploring impossible geometries, running time backward, dissolving the boundaries of self, all while carefully ensuring you wake with your sanity and creativity intact. Perhaps that's the most beautiful paradox of all. We can only remain ourselves by regularly ceasing to be ourselves. We can only remember by forgetting. We can only stay grounded in reality by nightly venturing into the impossible. Thank you for joining me in this exploration of consciousness at its most mysterious and magnificent. May your sleep be deep, your dreams be rich even if forgotten, and may you wake tomorrow gently transformed by journeys you won't remember through worlds that never existed. Until we meet again in this quiet corner of wonder, this is your companion in curiosity, wishing you the sweetest of dreams and the wisest of forgetting. Good night. There's something profoundly unsettling and yet deeply fascinating about the moment when consciousness seems to slip free from its physical moorings. Throughout human history, in every culture and era, people have reported the extraordinary sensation of floating above their own bodies, watching themselves from a distance as though the tether between mind and flesh had suddenly, impossibly, come loose. These out-of-body experiences, or OBEs as researchers call them, represent one of the most intriguing phenomena in the study of consciousness, sitting at the peculiar intersection where neuroscience meets philosophy, where measurable brain activity collides with the ineffable nature of subjective experience. Picture this scene. It happens thousands of times each year across the world. Someone lies on an operating table, their heart stops beating, medical monitors flatline, and yet later, when resuscitated, they describe watching the entire scene from above, observing doctors working on their motionless form, sometimes reporting conversations and details they seemingly couldn't have known. Or consider the mountain climber, exhausted and oxygen-deprived at extreme altitude, who suddenly finds their perspective shifting, watching their struggling body from outside as if their consciousness had become a separate observer. These aren't rare, isolated incidents. Studies suggest that somewhere between 8 and 20% of people will experience at least one out-of-body experience during their lifetime, making this phenomenon far more common than we might imagine. The experience typically begins with a strange sensation, often described as a vibration or buzzing throughout the body, as if every cell was suddenly humming at a frequency just beyond normal perception. Then comes the feeling of separation, sometimes gentle, like sliding out of silk sheets, sometimes dramatic, like being pulled through the top of one's head. People describe looking down at their physical form with a mixture of curiosity and detachment, as though observing a familiar stranger. The body below appears peaceful, still, almost foreign, while the observing consciousness feels remarkably clear, often more lucid than normal waking awareness. What makes these experiences particularly compelling isn't just their vividness or their consistency across cultures and individuals who've never heard each other's accounts. It's the profound impact they have on those who experience them. Many people report that a single out-of-body experience fundamentally altered their understanding of consciousness, death, and the nature of existence itself. The conviction that consciousness can exist independently of the physical body, even briefly, challenges our most basic assumptions about what we are. But here's where the scientific investigation becomes particularly intriguing. Rather than dismissing these experiences as mere hallucinations or wishful thinking, neuroscientists have discovered that out-of-body experiences correspond to specific measurable changes in brain activity. The temporoparietal junction, that remarkable region where the temporal and parietal lobes meet, appears to play a crucial role in maintaining our sense of embodied self. When this area is disrupted, whether through electrical stimulation, seizure activity, oxygen deprivation, or other causes, the usually seamless integration of sensory information that creates our sense of being located within our body can fragment. This neural crossroads, the temporoparietal junction, normally performs an incredibly complex task every moment of our waking lives. It integrates visual information about where we are in space, proprioceptive signals telling us the position of our limbs, vestibular input about balance and movement, and tactile sensations from our skin. All of these streams of information are woven together into the coherent experience of being a physical self located at a specific point in space. We take this integration for granted, never noticing the sophisticated neural choreography required to maintain it, until something disrupts the performance. Swiss neuroscientist Olaf Blanke made a remarkable discovery when he was able to repeatedly trigger out-of-body experiences in patients by electrically stimulating specific regions of the temporoparietal junction. With the application of a small electrical current to just the right spot, patients would suddenly report seeing themselves from outside their bodies, floating near the ceiling or standing beside themselves. When the stimulation stopped, consciousness snapped back into its usual bodily perspective like a rubber band returning to its resting position. These laboratory-induced OBEs share many characteristics with spontaneous ones: the shift in visual perspective, the sense of floating or hovering, the peculiar detachment from the physical form. Yet they also reveal something profound about the constructed nature of our everyday experience. The feeling of being solidly located within our body, which seems so fundamental and unquestionable, turns out to be an active creation of the brain, continuously generated by the successful integration of multiple sensory streams. When that integration fails or is disrupted, consciousness doesn't disappear, it simply experiences itself from a different vantage point. Consider what happens during cardiac arrest, one of the most common triggers for out-of-body experiences. As the heart stops pumping blood to the brain, oxygen levels plummet. Different regions of the brain shut down at different rates, creating a cascade of unusual neural activity. The visual cortex might continue processing information, while the regions responsible for integrating that information into a coherent body schema go offline. The result could be visual awareness without the usual anchoring to a bodily perspective, consciousness observing but not embedded. Yet this neurological explanation, elegant as it might be, doesn't fully account for some of the more puzzling aspects of out-of-body experiences. There are numerous documented cases where individuals having OBEs during surgery or cardiac arrest later reported accurate details about events they couldn't have observed from their physical position. They describe conversations in other rooms, objects placed on high shelves specifically to test such claims, or unusual events that occurred while they were clinically unconscious. These veridical OBEs, as they're called, present a particular challenge to purely brain-based explanations. The case of Pam Reynolds has become perhaps the most famous example. During surgery to remove a brain aneurysm, her body temperature was lowered to 60 degrees Fahrenheit, her heart was stopped, and the blood was drained from her brain. By any measure, she should have been completely unconscious, yet she later described floating above her body, watching the surgery, and accurately reported specific details including the unusual shape of the bone saw used to open her skull and conversations between medical staff. The surgical team confirmed her descriptions were accurate, including details she couldn't have known beforehand. How do we reconcile such cases with our understanding of consciousness as a product of brain activity? Some researchers propose that brief periods of heightened awareness might occur during the transition into or out of unconsciousness, allowing for the perception and later recall of events. Others suggest that the brain might maintain some level of information processing even during apparent clinical death, perhaps through mechanisms we don't yet understand. Still others argue that these cases hint at something more radical, that consciousness might have properties that transcend our current neuroscientific models. The phenomenon becomes even more intriguing when we consider that out-of-body experiences aren't limited to near-death situations. They can occur during meditation, sensory deprivation, extreme physical exertion, or even spontaneously during ordinary activities. Some people report being able to induce them voluntarily through specific techniques, suggesting that the capacity for this shifted perspective might be latent in all of us, waiting for the right conditions to manifest. Robert Monroe, a successful business executive, had his first spontaneous out-of-body experience in 1958 and spent the rest of his life studying and documenting the phenomenon. He developed techniques for inducing OBEs, founded a research institute, and wrote extensively about his experiences traveling in what he called the out-of-body state. His work, while controversial, brought systematic attention to the possibility that consciousness might be more mobile, more flexible than our everyday experience suggests. The techniques Monroe and others developed often involve a combination of deep relaxation, focused attention, and specific mental imagery. Practitioners describe learning to recognize the vibrational state that precedes separation, maintaining awareness while the body falls asleep, and using various visualization methods to facilitate the shift in perspective. While skeptics argue these are simply lucid dreams or hypnagogic hallucinations, experienced practitioners insist there's a qualitative difference between dreaming and the out-of-body state. This brings us to a fascinating aspect of the phenomenon, the remarkable consistency in how out-of-body experiences are described across cultures and throughout history. Ancient Egyptian texts describe the ka, a double that could separate from the physical body. Hindu and Buddhist traditions speak of subtle bodies that can travel independently of the physical form. Shamanic practices worldwide include techniques for journeying outside the body. Even Plato wrote about the soul's ability to separate from the body, viewing it as evidence of the soul's immortality. This cross-cultural consistency suggests we're dealing with something fundamental to human consciousness, whether it's a universal feature of how brains construct self-awareness or something more mysterious. The experience seems to tap into deep questions about the nature of consciousness that have puzzled philosophers and mystics for millennia. Are we simply biological machines, with consciousness as an emergent property of neural activity? Or is there something more to awareness, something that can, under certain conditions, operate independently of its physical substrate? Modern neuroscience has revealed fascinating details about how the brain constructs our sense of self and location. The posterior parietal cortex maintains a constantly updated map of the body in space. The premotor cortex prepares potential movements and predicts their sensory consequences. The insular cortex integrates interoceptive signals from within the body. All of these systems work together to create what we experience as embodied selfhood. When their coordination is disrupted, whether through injury, electrical stimulation, or altered states of consciousness, our usual sense of being contained within our physical boundaries can dissolve. Virtual reality researchers have discovered they can trigger mild out-of-body experiences using relatively simple visual tricks. By showing people a video feed of themselves from behind while tapping their back in synchronization with the visual image, researchers can create the illusion that consciousness is located outside the body. Participants report feeling as though they're standing behind themselves, watching their own body from a third-person perspective. These experiments reveal how dependent our sense of embodiment is on the alignment of sensory information and how easily that sense can be manipulated. Yet there's something qualitatively different about spontaneous out-of-body experiences, particularly those occurring during extreme circumstances. People who've had near-death OBEs often describe them as more real than ordinary reality, characterized by enhanced clarity of thought, expanded awareness, and a profound sense of peace. Many report that the experience eliminated their fear of death, convinced that consciousness continues beyond the physical body. The relationship between out-of-body experiences and near-death experiences is particularly intriguing. While not all near-death experiences include an OBE component, many do, and the out-of-body phase often precedes other classic NDE elements, like the tunnel of light, life review, or encounters with deceased relatives. This suggests that the shift in perspective from embodied to disembodied consciousness might be a gateway to even more profound alterations in awareness. Research into near-death experiences has revealed consistent patterns of brain activity during cardiac arrest. In the moments after the heart stops, there's often a surge of gamma wave activity, the high-frequency brain waves associated with conscious awareness and information integration. This surge, sometimes called the death spike, might represent the brain's last attempt to make sense of its declining state, potentially generating the vivid experiences reported by those who are resuscitated. But gamma waves alone don't explain the information that some people report acquiring during their out-of-body experiences. Cases where individuals describe events in other rooms, identify objects they couldn't have seen, or report conversations they couldn't have heard challenge our understanding of how consciousness accesses information. If awareness is purely a product of brain activity, how can it perceive events beyond the range of the body's sensory organs? One hypothesis suggests that during extreme states, consciousness might access information through quantum processes that transcend classical physical limitations. While this remains highly speculative, some researchers point to quantum effects in microtubules within neurons as a possible mechanism for non-local consciousness. Stuart Hameroff and Roger Penrose's orchestrated objective reduction theory proposes that consciousness emerges from quantum processes in the brain, potentially allowing for phenomena that classical neuroscience can't explain. The study of out-of-body experiences also intersects with research into other anomalous phenomena. Remote viewing experiments, where individuals attempt to perceive distant locations without any sensory input, share some characteristics with OBEs. Some remote viewers describe a sense of travelling to the target location, as if their awareness could move independently through space. While controversial, some controlled studies have reported statistically significant results, suggesting that consciousness might have capacities we don't yet understand. The military and intelligence communities have shown sporadic interest in out-of-body experiences and related phenomena. Projects like the CIA's Stargate program investigated whether OBEs and remote viewing could be used for intelligence gathering. While officially concluded as unsuccessful, declassified documents reveal intriguing cases where accurate information was apparently obtained through non-conventional means. The fact that such programs existed at all suggests that even skeptical institutions have wondered whether consciousness might have untapped capabilities. For those who've experienced them, out-of-body experiences often serve as profound spiritual or philosophical turning points. Many describe them as proof that consciousness isn't confined to the brain, that we are more than our physical bodies. This conviction can lead to reduced anxiety about death, increased interest in spiritual practices, and a fundamental shift in worldview. Whether or not OBEs truly represent consciousness existing outside the body, their psychological impact is undeniable. The phenomenology of out-of-body experiences, how they feel from the inside, reveals consistent patterns that transcend individual differences. People describe a sense of lightness, as if freed from the weight of physical existence. Colours often appear more vivid, thoughts clearer, and perception sharper than in ordinary consciousness. Many report a feeling of expanded awareness, able to perceive in all directions simultaneously rather than being limited to the forward-facing perspective of embodied vision. Movement during out-of-body experiences is typically described as thought-directed. Simply thinking about a location results in moving there, without the need for physical locomotion. Some people report being able to pass through solid objects, while others find themselves blocked by walls or ceilings, suggesting that expectations and beliefs might shape the experience. The out-of-body environment often resembles the physical world, but with subtle differences, sometimes described as more fluid or dreamlike. The silver cord is another commonly reported feature, described as a luminous thread connecting the floating consciousness to the physical body. Some experiencers report that this cord can stretch infinitely but creates a pullback toward the body if extended too far. Others describe the fear that breaking this cord would result in death, though there are no documented cases of anyone dying simply from having an out-of-body experience. The consistency of this detail across cultures suggests it might represent a deep archetypal symbol of the connection between consciousness and body. Scientists studying OBEs have identified several factors that increase their likelihood. Sleep deprivation, sensory deprivation, and certain medications all seem to facilitate the experience. Meditation practitioners, particularly those focusing on body awareness and dissociation techniques, report higher rates of OBEs. People with certain neurological conditions, such as temporal lobe epilepsy, are also more prone to out-of-body experiences, supporting the connection to specific brain regions. The relationship between out-of-body experiences and sleep phenomena is particularly interesting. Many spontaneous OBEs occur during the hypnagogic state, that twilight zone between waking and sleeping. Sleep paralysis, where the body's motor functions shut down while consciousness remains active, often precedes out-of-body experiences. This suggests that OBEs might involve a dissociation between different aspects of consciousness that normally transition together between sleep and wake states. Lucid dreaming and out-of-body experiences share some characteristics, but are generally reported as distinct phenomena. While both involve conscious awareness during altered states, experienced practitioners describe different qualities of consciousness, different degrees of control, and different relationships to the physical body. Some researchers propose that OBEs might be a special category of lucid dream, while others argue they represent a genuinely different state of consciousness. The question of whether out-of-body experiences are real or hallucinatory might be asking the wrong question. Even if OBEs are generated entirely within the brain, they reveal something profound about the nature of consciousness and its relationship to embodiment. The fact that awareness can experience itself as separate from the body, even if this separation is illusory, tells us that the sense of being located within our physical form is itself a construction that can be deconstructed. Consider the implications for our understanding of self. If the feeling of being inside our body is actively generated by neural processes rather than being a fundamental fact of existence, what does this say about the nature of identity? Are we our bodies, our brains, or something more ephemeral, a pattern of information that happens to be instantiated in biological tissue, but could in principle exist elsewhere? These questions become particularly poignant when considering the future of consciousness. As we develop increasingly sophisticated brain-computer interfaces, virtual reality systems, and potentially even consciousness uploading technologies, the lessons learned from studying out-of-body experiences might prove invaluable. If consciousness can naturally experience itself as disembodied, perhaps the transition to non-biological substrates might be less discontinuous than we imagine. The therapeutic potential of out-of-body experiences is another area of growing interest. Some therapists use guided OBE techniques to help patients dealing with trauma, chronic pain, or end-of-life anxiety. By learning to experience consciousness as separate from the body, patients might gain new perspectives on their suffering and develop different relationships with physical or emotional pain. While clinical research is still limited, anecdotal reports suggest that induced OBEs can have profound therapeutic benefits. Virtual reality therapy is beginning to incorporate insights from OBE research. By creating controlled out-of-body experiences in virtual environments, therapists can help patients confront fears, process trauma, or prepare for medical procedures. The ability to see oneself from an outside perspective, even in a virtual context, can provide valuable psychological distance and new insights into personal challenges. The study of out-of-body experiences also contributes to our understanding of presence, that feeling of being somewhere. Virtual reality developers are particularly interested in this research, as creating a sense of presence in virtual environments is crucial for immersive experiences. The mechanisms that can make consciousness feel located outside the body might be the same ones that can make it feel present in a virtual world. As we delve deeper into the neuroscience of OBEs, we're discovering that the brain regions involved aren't just passive integrators of sensory information. They actively predict and model the body's relationship to space. The temporoparietal junction contains neurons that fire not based on actual sensory input, but on predicted sensory consequences of potential movements. This predictive modelling might be what allows consciousness to experience itself from different perspectives, essentially running a simulation of what it would be like to observe it from outside the body. The angular gyrus, another brain region implicated in out-of-body experiences, plays a crucial role in integrating information across different sensory modalities and maintaining the distinction between self and other. Damage to this area can result in various dissociative phenomena, including autoscopy, where people see a double of themselves, and heutoscopy, where they experience themselves as being in two places simultaneously. These conditions provide natural experiments in how the brain constructs and maintains unified self-experience. Research has also revealed interesting connections between out-of-body experiences and the default mode network, the brain system active during rest and introspection. Changes in default mode network activity are associated with various altered states of consciousness, including those induced by psychedelic substances, meditation, and sensory deprivation. The dissolution of the usual boundaries of self that characterizes these states might share underlying mechanisms with the perspective shift of OBEs. The phenomenology of returning to the body after an out-of-body experience is often as remarkable as the departure. People describe being snapped back like a rubber band, falling back into their physical form, or gently settling back into embodiment. The moment of return is sometimes accompanied by a jolt or shock, as if consciousness needs to restart its normal operating parameters. Many report a period of disorientation, having to remember how to operate their physical body after experiencing disembodied awareness. Some experiencers describe reluctance to return to their bodies, finding the out-of-body state more pleasant and natural than embodied consciousness. This preference challenges our assumption that embodiment is the default or preferred state of awareness. Could it be that consciousness naturally tends toward expansion, and that our usual containment within physical boundaries requires constant neural effort to maintain? The cultural and religious implications of out-of-body experiences extend far beyond individual spiritual beliefs. If consciousness can exist independently of the brain, even temporarily, it would fundamentally challenge materialist philosophy and scientific naturalism. On the other hand, if OBEs are entirely brain-generated, they might explain the origin of beliefs in souls, spirits, and afterlife across human cultures. Either way, understanding OBEs helps us understand the roots of human spirituality and our deep-seated intuitions about consciousness. Ancient meditation texts from various traditions include detailed instructions for inducing out-of-body experiences, though they are often described in different terms. Tibetan dream yoga includes practices for maintaining awareness while the body sleeps and learning to navigate non-physical realms. Hindu and Buddhist teachings about subtle bodies provide elaborate cartographies of consciousness beyond the physical form. These traditions suggest that the capacity for out-of-body experience might be a trainable skill rather than a random anomaly. Modern practitioners have developed secular techniques for inducing OBEs, stripped of religious or metaphysical frameworks. The wake-initiated lucid dream technique involves maintaining consciousness while allowing the body to fall asleep. The rope technique involves visualizing climbing a rope to pull consciousness out of the body. The rollout method involves imagining rolling sideways out of the physical form. While success rates vary, many people report achieving at least partial out-of-body experiences using these methods. The question of what exactly travels during an out-of-body experience remains contentious. Traditional explanations invoke subtle bodies, astral forms, or souls that can separate from physical flesh. Modern explanations focus on shifts in neural representation and perspective taking. Some theorists propose information-based models where consciousness is understood as a pattern that can be instantiated in different substrates or locations. Each explanation carries different implications for our understanding of consciousness and its relationship to physical reality. Research into out-of-body experiences has practical applications beyond understanding consciousness. Aviation psychologists study OBEs to better understand spatial disorientation in pilots. Neurosurgeons use knowledge of OBE-related brain regions to avoid triggering dissociative experiences during brain surgery. Virtual reality developers apply insights from OBE research to create more immersive and presence-inducing experiences. Even architects and designers are beginning to consider how spatial environments might facilitate or prevent dissociative experiences. The connection between out-of-body experiences and empathy is another fascinating area of investigation. The ability to see oneself from an outside perspective might be related to the capacity to take another person's point of view. Some researchers propose that the same neural mechanisms that allow for OBEs also enable theory of mind, our ability to understand that others have different perspectives and mental states. This connection suggests that the capacity for out-of-body experience might have evolutionary advantages beyond any spiritual significance. Studies have found that people who've had out-of-body experiences score higher on measures of empathy and perspective-taking. Whether this is because OBEs enhance these capacities, or because naturally empathetic people are more prone to OBEs remains unclear. The relationship between dissociative experiences and social cognition opens new avenues for understanding both consciousness and human social abilities. The boundary between self and other, inside and outside, subject and object, becomes remarkably fluid during out-of-body experiences. This fluidity challenges Western philosophy's traditional emphasis on the isolated, bounded self. Eastern philosophies, with their emphasis on interconnection and the illusory nature of separation, might be better equipped to accommodate the insights from OBE research. The experience of consciousness without its usual boundaries offers experiential support for non-dualist philosophies that view separation as a cognitive construction rather than fundamental reality. As we investigate out-of-body experiences with increasingly sophisticated tools, from high-resolution brain imaging to virtual reality to pharmacological interventions, we're building a more complete picture of how consciousness relates to embodiment. Each new discovery reveals both the remarkable flexibility of awareness and the sophisticated neural machinery that usually keeps it anchored to our physical form. The study of OBEs sits at the cutting edge of consciousness research, pushing us to expand our models of what awareness is and how it operates. The development of brain-computer interfaces raises intriguing questions about the future of out-of-body experiences. If we can feed sensory information directly to the brain from remote robots or virtual avatars, we might be able to create technologically mediated OBEs. The experience of controlling a distant mechanical body while our physical form remains stationary might share phenomenological features with spontaneous out-of-body experiences. As these technologies advance, the line between natural and artificial OBEs might become increasingly blurred. Some futurists speculate about the possibility of consciousness uploading, transferring human awareness to non-biological substrates. While this remains firmly in the realm of speculation, research into out-of-body experiences might provide valuable insights into what such a transition might feel like. If consciousness can naturally experience itself as disembodied, perhaps the uploaded mind wouldn't find its new substrate as alien as we might imagine. The ethical implications of technologically induced out-of-body experiences deserve careful consideration. If we can reliably trigger OBEs through brain stimulation or virtual reality, questions arise about consent, safety, and potential psychological impacts. Would induced OBEs carry the same transformative potential as spontaneous ones? Could they be used therapeutically, or might they pose risks for certain individuals? As our ability to manipulate consciousness expands, these questions become increasingly urgent. The relationship between out-of-body experiences and mental health is complex and still being unraveled. While many people find OBEs positive and transformative, they can also be distressing, particularly when unexpected or uncontrolled. Some individuals with dissociative disorders experience involuntary OBEs as symptoms of their condition. Understanding when OBEs are beneficial versus pathological requires careful attention to context, frequency, and impact on daily functioning. Depersonalization and derealization, conditions where people feel detached from themselves or their surroundings, share some features with out-of-body experiences. However, while OBEs are typically brief and often positive, chronic depersonalization can be deeply distressing. Research into these conditions might reveal a spectrum of dissociative experiences, from adaptive perspective taking through transformative OBEs to pathological dissociation. The study of out-of-body experiences in children reveals interesting developmental patterns. Young children sometimes report spontaneous OBEs, but often lack the conceptual framework to understand or articulate them. As children develop a more solid sense of bodily self, spontaneous OBEs typically become less common. This developmental trajectory suggests that the capacity for out-of-body experience might be more accessible before the neural networks maintaining embodied selfhood fully mature. Some researchers propose that imaginary friends, a common childhood phenomenon, might sometimes involve mild out-of-body experiences or perspective-taking that extends beyond the usual boundaries of self. Children's fluid relationship with embodiment and identity might make them naturally more prone to experiences that adults would consider anomalous. Understanding these developmental patterns could provide insights into how the brain learns to maintain stable self-boundaries. The role of culture in shaping out-of-body experiences cannot be overlooked. While core features remain consistent across cultures, the interpretation and elaboration of OBEs vary significantly. In cultures where such experiences are expected and valued, they tend to be more common and elaborate. In cultures where they're dismissed or pathologized, people might be less likely to report them or might experience them as distressing rather than enlightening. Western culture's emphasis on materialism and scientific rationalism creates a context where out-of-body experiences are often dismissed or medicalized. This cultural framework might actually limit our ability to understand and study these phenomena. Researchers must navigate between taking experiences seriously and maintaining scientific rigor, avoiding both uncritical acceptance and dismissive skepticism. The phenomenology of space during out-of-body experiences reveals interesting paradoxes. Experiencers often report being able to perceive in all directions simultaneously, suggesting a form of awareness unconstrained by the forward-facing orientation of embodied vision. Yet they also describe specific locations and movements through space, implying some form of spatial positioning. This paradox might reveal something fundamental about how consciousness constructs spatial experience. Some out-of-body experiencers report perceiving colours beyond the normal visual spectrum or sounds beyond the range of human hearing. While these reports might be elaborations or misinterpretations of unusual perceptual states, they raise questions about the relationship between consciousness and sensory limitations. If awareness can exist independently of sensory organs, what determines the boundaries of perception? The question of time during out-of-body experiences adds another layer of mystery. Many experiencers report that time seems to flow differently while out of body, either stretched or compressed relative to normal perception. Some describe accessing past or future events, though verification of such claims remains elusive. The altered relationship to time during OBEs might provide clues about how consciousness constructs temporal experience. Research into out-of-body experiences continues to evolve with new technologies and methodologies. Brain imaging studies are revealing ever more detailed maps of the neural correlates of OBEs. Virtual reality experiments are allowing researchers to induce and study controlled out-of-body-like experiences. Pharmacological studies are identifying neurotransmitter systems involved in maintaining embodied selfhood. Each advance brings us closer to understanding this remarkable phenomenon, while also revealing new layers of complexity. The convergence of out-of-body experience research with other fields is producing unexpected insights. Robotics engineers studying telepresence are essentially trying to create controlled OBEs. Anesthesiologists investigating awareness during surgery are documenting cases that blur the line between unconsciousness and out-of-body experience. Even quantum physicists speculating about consciousness and measurement are finding relevance in OBE research. As we accumulate more data about out-of-body experiences, patterns are emerging that transcend individual cases. The consistency of certain features, the vibrational state, the sense of floating, the clarity of awareness, suggests that OBEs tap into fundamental aspects of how consciousness operates. Whether these patterns reflect neural mechanisms, phenomenological structures, or something more mysterious remains an open question. The transformative potential of out-of-body experiences extends beyond individual psychology to collective human understanding. If millions of people across cultures and throughout history have experienced consciousness as separable from the body, what does this say about the nature of human awareness? Even if OBEs are ultimately explained in purely neurological terms, They reveal the remarkable plasticity of consciousness and its capacity to transcend its usual boundaries. The fear that scientific explanation might diminish the significance of out-of-body experiences reflects a misunderstanding of what neuroscience reveals. Understanding the neural correlates of OBEs doesn't make them less remarkable any more than understanding the physics of rainbows makes them less beautiful. If anything, discovering the sophisticated neural choreography that allows consciousness to experience itself from different perspectives only adds to our wonder at the complexity of awareness. Some philosophers argue that out-of-body experiences provide a natural experiment in the hard problem of consciousness. The qualitative feeling of being outside one's body, the what-it's likeness of the experience, seems to exceed any purely physical description. Even if we can identify every neural correlate of OBEs, does this explain the subjective experience itself? This question cuts to the heart of consciousness studies and highlights why OBEs remain philosophically significant, regardless of their ultimate explanation. The possibility that out-of-body experiences might provide evidence for consciousness beyond the brain continues to intrigue researchers and experiencers alike. While mainstream neuroscience generally assumes that OBEs are brain-generated, the veridical cases where accurate information is obtained during apparent unconsciousness remain puzzling. These cases might require us to expand our models of consciousness, perhaps recognizing non-local properties or information accessing mechanisms we don't yet understand. As we explore the edges of consciousness through phenomena like out-of-body experiences, we're reminded of how much we still don't know about awareness. The feeling of being a unified self located within a body, which seems so fundamental and obvious, turns out to be a complex construction that can come apart under certain conditions. This revelation invites humility about our understanding of consciousness and openness to possibilities that might transcend our current scientific paradigms. The study of out-of-body experiences ultimately returns us to the deepest questions about human existence. What are we? Are we our bodies, our brains, or something more? Can consciousness exist independently of physical form? What happens to awareness when the body dies? While OBE research might not provide definitive answers to these questions, it offers tantalizing clues and experiential data that any complete theory of consciousness must account for. For those who've experienced them, out-of-body experiences often serve as proof that we are more than mere biological machines. The direct experience of consciousness without its usual physical boundaries can be so compelling that it overrides skeptical doubts and materialist assumptions. Whether this conviction reflects a genuine insight into the nature of consciousness or a compelling illusion generated by unusual brain states remains one of the most fascinating questions in consciousness studies. The journey to understand out-of-body experiences has taken us from ancient shamanic practices to modern neuroscience laboratories, from philosophical speculation to virtual reality experiments. Along the way, we've discovered that the boundary between self and world, inside and outside consciousness and body, is far more fluid than everyday experience suggests. These discoveries challenge us to expand our conception of what consciousness is and what it might be capable of. As research continues, new questions emerge faster than old ones are answered. Can technology reliably induce beneficial out-of-body experiences? What evolutionary purpose might the capacity for OBEs serve? How do these experiences relate to other altered states of consciousness? Each question opens new avenues for investigation and brings us closer to understanding the nature of awareness itself. The personal significance of out-of-body experiences often transcends their scientific explanation. For many experiencers, these moments of expanded awareness serve as turning points, catalyzing spiritual growth, reducing death anxiety, or inspiring new directions in life. The meaning people derive from OBEs might be as important as their neurological basis, reminding us that consciousness is not just a scientific puzzle but a lived experience full of personal significance. Looking toward the future, out-of-body experience research stands at an exciting crossroads. Advances in neurotechnology promise new ways to study and potentially induce these experiences. Virtual and augmented reality technologies are creating new forms of disembodied awareness. Brain-computer interfaces might soon allow consciousness to operate through multiple bodies or perspectives simultaneously. Each development brings new opportunities to understand the relationship between consciousness and embodiment. The implications of this research extend far beyond academic curiosity. As we face questions about artificial intelligence, consciousness uploading, and the nature of death, insights from out-of-body experience research become increasingly relevant. Understanding how consciousness can experience itself as separate from the body might prove crucial for navigating humanity's technological future and our evolving relationship with embodiment. In medical settings, knowledge about out-of-body experiences is already improving patient care. Healthcare providers who understand OBEs can better support patients who have these experiences during medical crises. Preparation for surgery might include discussion of potential OBEs, reducing anxiety if they occur. End-of-life care can acknowledge and validate out-of-body experiences as part of the dying process, providing comfort to patients and families. The integration of out-of-body experience research with contemplative traditions offers rich possibilities for understanding consciousness. Modern neuroscience is validating aspects of ancient wisdom about the flexibility of awareness, while contemplative practices provide experiential methods for exploring states that science is only beginning to map. This convergence might lead to new hybrid approaches that combine scientific rigor with experiential depth. Educational implications of OBE research are also worth considering. If the capacity for perspective taking and cognitive flexibility can be enhanced through practices that facilitate out-of-body experiences, might these techniques have applications in education? Could virtual reality OBEs help students understand different viewpoints or overcome cognitive biases? The potential applications are limited only by our imagination and our willingness to explore consciousness's farther reaches. As we consider the environmental and social challenges facing humanity, the perspective shift offered by out-of-body experiences might have unexpected relevance. The ability to see oneself from outside, to experience consciousness as not limited to individual physical form, might foster the kind of expanded identity and empathy needed to address global challenges. Perhaps the overview effect reported by astronauts seeing Earth from space shares something fundamental with the perspective shift of OBEs. The relationship between creativity and out-of-body experiences is another fertile area for exploration. Many artists, writers, and innovators report that their most creative insights come during states of consciousness that resemble OBEs. The ability to step outside one's usual perspective, to see problems from new angles, might be enhanced by practices that facilitate out-of-body-like states. Understanding this connection could lead to new techniques for enhancing creativity and problem-solving. Sleep researchers are discovering interesting connections between out-of-body experiences and various sleep phenomena. The hypnagogic and hypnopompic states that bookend sleep seem particularly conducive to OBEs, those twilight moments when the boundaries between waking and sleeping consciousness become permeable. During these transitional states, the usual mechanisms that maintain our sense of embodied self can falter, allowing awareness to drift free from its physical anchor. The phenomenon of false awakenings, where people dream they've woken up while actually remaining asleep, shares interesting parallels with out-of-body experiences. Both involve a dissociation between consciousness and physical state. Both can involve perceiving one's body from an external perspective, and both challenge our assumptions about the clarity of boundaries between different states of awareness. Some researchers propose that false awakenings might actually be a form of OBE occurring within the dream state. Exploring the neurochemistry of out-of-body experiences reveals fascinating connections to various neurotransmitter systems. The release of endorphins during extreme stress might facilitate the peaceful, even blissful quality many OBE experiencers report. Alterations in dopamine signaling could contribute to the sense of significance and meaning that often accompanies these experiences. Changes in acetylcholine levels, particularly during REM sleep, might enable the dissociation between consciousness and body schema that characterizes OBEs. The role of the endocannabinoid system in out-of-body experiences is particularly intriguing. This natural neurotransmitter system, which helps regulate everything from mood to memory to pain perception, might be activated during the extreme conditions that often trigger OBEs. The sense of detachment, altered time perception, and reduced anxiety that characterize many out-of-body experiences mirror some effects of endocannabinoid activation, suggesting a possible neurochemical substrate for these extraordinary states. Ketamine, an anesthetic known for inducing dissociative states, has provided researchers with a pharmacological window into out-of-body experiences. At sub-anesthetic doses, ketamine can reliably trigger OBE-like states, complete with the sense of floating above one's body and observing from an external perspective. The drug works by blocking NMDA receptors, disrupting the normal integration of sensory information that maintains our sense of embodied self. Studies of ketamine-induced OBEs are helping researchers understand the neurotransmitter systems involved in maintaining and dissolving self-boundaries. The relationship between trauma and out-of-body experiences adds another layer of complexity to our understanding. Many trauma survivors report spontaneous OBEs during traumatic events, as if consciousness retreats to a safe observational distance when the body is threatened. This dissociative response might serve a protective function, allowing awareness to maintain some coherence when physical experience becomes overwhelming. Understanding this connection has important implications for treating post-traumatic stress disorder and other trauma-related conditions. Some therapists are exploring whether controlled, therapeutic out-of-body experiences might help trauma survivors process and integrate difficult experiences. By revisiting traumatic memories from the detached perspective of an OBE, patients might be able to engage with the material without being overwhelmed by it. While this approach remains experimental, early reports suggest that OBE-based interventions might offer new pathways for healing trauma. The connection between out-of-body experiences and the phenomenon of phantom limbs provides unexpected insights into embodied consciousness. People with amputated limbs often continue to feel sensations in the missing body part, as if the neural representation of the limb persists despite its physical absence. This disconnect between body schema and physical form mirrors aspects of OBEs, where consciousness experiences itself in locations where the physical body is not. Both phenomena reveal that our sense of embodiment is more about neural representation than physical presence. Research into out-of-body experiences is also shedding light on conditions like body integrity, identity disorder, where people feel that certain body parts don't belong to them. The ability of consciousness to experience itself as separate from parts or all of the body might exist on a spectrum, from the temporary dissociation of OBEs through phantom limb sensations to persistent feelings of bodily alienation. Understanding this spectrum could lead to better treatments for various disorders of embodiment. The question of whether animals experience out-of-body experiences opens fascinating avenues for comparative consciousness studies. While we can't directly ask animals about their subjective experiences, observations of behavior during near-death situations or under anesthesia sometimes suggest dissociative states. If other species can have OBEs, it would suggest that the capacity for consciousness to experience itself as disembodied might be a fundamental feature of awareness rather than a uniquely human phenomenon. Some researchers have proposed that the capacity for out-of-body experiences might have provided evolutionary advantages. The ability to mentally simulate different perspectives could enhance problem-solving, predator avoidance, and social cognition. The neural mechanisms that allow for OBEs might be exaptations of systems originally evolved for other purposes, such as spatial navigation or theory of mind. This evolutionary perspective suggests that the capacity for out-of-body experience might be deeply embedded in the architecture of consciousness. The relationship between out-of-body experiences and mystical or spiritual experiences more broadly reveals interesting patterns. Many features of OBEs, including ego dissolution, unity experiences, and encounters with seemingly autonomous entities, appear across various altered states of consciousness. Whether induced by meditation, psychedelic substances, sensory deprivation, or spontaneous shifts in brain activity, these experiences might share underlying neural mechanisms related to the dissolution and reconstruction of self-boundaries. Modern psychedelic research is revealing interesting connections between out-of-body experiences and the effects of substances like psilocybin, LSD, and DMT. These compounds can trigger experiences that share many features with spontaneous OBEs, including the sense of consciousness separating from the body, traveling through space, and encountering other dimensions or entities. The study of psychedelic-induced OBEs is providing new insights into the neurochemistry of self-boundaries and the construction of embodied experience. DMT, often called the spirit molecule, is particularly notable for its ability to induce intense out-of-body experiences. Users frequently report being catapulted out of their bodies into alien realms populated by autonomous entities. While these experiences are often dismissed as hallucinations, their consistency across users and cultures suggests they might reveal something fundamental about consciousness's capacity to experience itself in radically different modes. The discovery that DMT is produced naturally in the human brain raises questions about whether endogenous DMT might play a role in spontaneous OBEs. The technological augmentation of out-of-body experiences represents a new frontier in consciousness research. Brain-computer interfaces that allow paralyzed individuals to control robotic limbs or computer cursors with thought alone are creating a form of technologically mediated disembodiment. As these technologies become more sophisticated, the line between natural and artificial out-of-body experiences might become increasingly blurred. Future humans might routinely experience consciousness operating through multiple bodies or perspectives simultaneously. Virtual reality is already allowing researchers to study out-of-body experiences in controlled laboratory settings. By manipulating visual, auditory, and tactile feedback, scientists can create compelling illusions of disembodiment. These experiments are revealing which sensory cues are crucial for maintaining embodied self-awareness and how easily this awareness can be disrupted or redirected. The insights gained from VR-OBE research have applications ranging from treating body image disorders to designing more immersive entertainment experiences. The possibility of shared out-of-body experiences, where multiple people report perceiving the same non-physical environment or encountering each other while out of body, remains one of the most controversial aspects of OBE research. While such claims are difficult to verify scientifically, the consistency of reports across cultures suggests that something interesting might be happening, whether it's a shared neurological response to similar conditions or something more mysterious. Research into near-death experiences has documented cases where people report meeting deceased relatives or friends during out-of-body experiences, sometimes learning information they didn't previously know that's later verified. While skeptics argue these are reconstructions based on subtle cues or lucky guesses, the emotional impact of these encounters is undeniable. For many experiencers, these meetings serve as powerful evidence for consciousness surviving bodily death. The question of what determines the content of out-of-body experiences remains largely unanswered. Why do some people float peacefully above their bodies while others travel to distant locations or alternate dimensions? Cultural conditioning certainly plays a role, but the core features of OBEs remain remarkably consistent across cultures. Understanding what shapes the specific content of these experiences might provide clues about how consciousness constructs its reality when freed from ordinary sensory constraints. The relationship between out-of-body experiences and time perception continues to puzzle researchers. Many OBE experiencers report that lengthy subjective experiences occur in moments of clock time, similar to the time dilation reported in dreams or under the influence of certain drugs. This temporal distortion might reflect consciousness operating in a different mode, unconstrained by the usual neural processes that generate our sense of temporal flow. Understanding this altered relationship to time could provide insights into how the brain constructs temporal experience. Some out-of-body experiencers report precognitive elements, claiming to perceive future events during their OBEs that later come to pass. While such claims are extraordinarily difficult to verify and often involve considerable reconstruction and selection bias, they raise provocative questions about consciousness and time. If awareness can occasionally access information about future events, it would require radical revisions to our understanding of both consciousness and physics. The healing potential of out-of-body experiences extends beyond psychological benefits to possible physical effects. Some people report spontaneous healings during or after OBEs, though establishing causal connections is virtually impossible. The profound shift in perspective and identity that can accompany an out-of-body experience might trigger psychosomatic healing responses, activating the body's self-repair mechanisms through mechanisms we don't yet understand. While claims of miraculous healings should be approached skeptically, the placebo effect demonstrates that consciousness can indeed influence physical health through poorly understood pathways. Research into out-of-body experiences is contributing to our understanding of the placebo effect more generally. The power of belief and expectation to influence physical outcomes might be related to consciousness's ability to transcend its usual limitations. If awareness can experience itself as separate from the body during OBEs, perhaps it can also influence bodily processes through non-ordinary channels. This connection suggests that studying OBEs might provide insights into mind-body healing that could revolutionize medicine. The question of whether out-of-body experiences can be harmful is important for both researchers and practitioners. While most OBEs are benign or beneficial, some people report frightening experiences or difficulty returning to normal embodied awareness. Certain individuals might be psychologically vulnerable to dissociative experiences, and induced OBEs should be approached with appropriate caution and support. Understanding who might be at risk for negative OBE experiences is crucial for developing safe protocols for research and therapeutic applications. The integration of out-of-body experiences into everyday life presents unique challenges. Many experiencers struggle to reconcile their extraordinary experience with ordinary consensus reality. Some become obsessed with recreating the experience, while others fear it might happen again involuntarily. Learning to integrate the insights and perspective shifts from OBEs while maintaining grounded functioning in daily life requires a delicate balance. Support groups and integration therapists are beginning to develop best practices for helping people process and integrate these extraordinary experiences. Cultural attitudes toward out-of-body experiences are slowly shifting as research accumulates and more people openly discuss their experiences. What was once dismissed as hallucination or fantasy is increasingly recognized as a genuine phenomenon worthy of serious study. This cultural shift might make people more willing to report OBEs, leading to better data and understanding. However, the commercialization and trivialization of OBEs in popular culture also poses risks, potentially distorting public understanding of these profound experiences. The relationship between out-of-body experiences and meditation practices deserves special attention. Many meditation traditions include techniques specifically designed to facilitate OBEs or similar states of consciousness. The systematic cultivation of the ability to observe thoughts, emotions, and sensations from a detached perspective might prepare the ground for more dramatic dissociations between awareness and embodiment. Understanding how meditation practices facilitate OBEs could lead to more reliable methods for inducing these experiences. Advanced meditation practitioners often report spontaneous out-of-body experiences during deep states of absorption or concentration. The jhanas of Buddhist meditation, characterized by profound alterations in consciousness, sometimes include OBE-like phenomena. The careful phenomenological maps developed by contemplative traditions might provide valuable frameworks for understanding and categorizing different types of out-of-body experiences. The convergence of contemplative phenomenology with neuroscientific research promises rich insights into consciousness. The question of whether out-of-body experiences provide evidence for consciousness independent of the brain remains hotly debated. Materialists argue that OBEs are entirely brain-generated, pointing to neural correlates and the ability to induce them through brain stimulation. Dualists and idealists see OBEs as evidence that consciousness transcends physical processes. The debate might ultimately be unresolvable through empirical means alone, touching on fundamental philosophical questions about the nature of reality. Recent developments in information theory and quantum mechanics are providing new frameworks for thinking about out-of-body experiences. If consciousness is fundamentally informational rather than physical, its apparent ability to transcend bodily boundaries becomes less mysterious. Quantum entanglement and non-locality might provide mechanisms for consciousness to access information beyond the classical limits of the sensory system. While these ideas remain highly speculative, they offer intriguing directions for future research. The study of out-of-body experiences in extreme environments is yielding valuable data. Mountain climbers at high altitude, deep-sea divers experiencing nitrogen narcosis, and astronauts in the disorienting environment of space all report increased rates of OBE-like phenomena. These extreme conditions might reveal thresholds where the brain's usual mechanisms for maintaining embodied self-awareness begin to fail. Understanding these thresholds has practical applications for maintaining human performance in challenging environments. Military pilots experiencing G-force-induced loss of consciousness often report out-of-body experiences during the moments before blackout. These G-ELOC OBEs share many features with near-death experiences, including tunnel vision, out-of-body perception, and feelings of peace or euphoria. The controlled conditions under which these experiences occur in flight simulators provide unique opportunities to study OBEs scientifically. Research into GLOC OBEs is contributing to both aviation safety and our understanding of consciousness under extreme conditions. The phenomenon of shared death experiences, where people present at someone's death report accompanying the dying person partway into an out-of-body experience or near-death experience, adds another layer of mystery to OBE research. These experiences suggest that consciousness might be more interconnected than our usual sense of separate selfhood suggests. While explaining shared death experiences within a materialist framework is challenging, they might reflect synchronized neural responses to the profound emotional and energetic shifts that occur around death. Research into terminal lucidity, where people with severe dementia or brain damage experience moments of clarity before death, might be related to out-of-body experiences. Both phenomena suggest that consciousness might have capabilities that transcend the apparent limitations of damaged neural tissue. Understanding these extraordinary capacities of awareness near death might revolutionize our approach to end-of-life care and our understanding of consciousness itself. The development of technologies for detecting and measuring out-of-body experiences represents an important frontier. Researchers are exploring whether OBEs produce distinctive electromagnetic signatures, whether they are associated with particular patterns of quantum coherence in the brain, or whether they might be detected through other physical correlates. While detecting consciousness outside the body remains a distant goal, developing objective measures of OBE states would significantly advance the field. The question of whether artificial intelligence could have out-of-body experiences raises fascinating questions about the nature of consciousness and embodiment. If OBEs are purely computational phenomena, arising from information processing, sufficiently sophisticated AI might be capable of them. On the other hand, if OBEs require biological consciousness or quantum processes unique to living systems, they might remain forever beyond artificial systems. This question touches on fundamental issues in consciousness studies and the philosophy of mind. As virtual and augmented reality technologies become more sophisticated, the distinction between real and simulated out-of-body experiences might become increasingly meaningless. If the subjective experience is identical, does it matter whether an OBE is spontaneous or technologically induced? Future humans might routinely experience multiple perspectives and forms of embodiment that would seem like miraculous OBEs to us today. The normalization of technologically mediated disembodiment might fundamentally alter human consciousness and culture. The implications of out-of-body experience research for our understanding of death are profound. If consciousness can exist independently of the body, even temporarily, it suggests that death might not be the absolute ending we typically assume. While this doesn't prove survival of consciousness after death, it at least demonstrates that awareness isn't as tightly bound to the physical body as everyday experience suggests. This possibility offers comfort to many facing their own mortality or grieving loved ones. The study of out-of-body experiences ultimately confronts us with the limits of current scientific paradigms. While neuroscience has made remarkable progress in identifying neural correlates of OBEs, explaining the subjective experience itself remains elusive. The hard problem of consciousness becomes particularly acute when considering experiences where awareness seems to transcend its physical substrate. OBE research might eventually force us to expand scientific frameworks to accommodate phenomena that don't fit neatly into materialist models. Looking toward the future, out-of-body experience research promises to remain at the forefront of consciousness studies. As our tools for studying the brain become more sophisticated and our willingness to take subjective experience seriously increases, we might finally begin to understand these remarkable states. Whether OBEs ultimately prove to be entirely brain-based, or evidence of consciousness beyond physical limits, their study is expanding our understanding of what it means to be aware. The personal and collective significance of out-of-body experiences transcends their scientific explanation. These moments when consciousness seems to slip free from physical constraints offer glimpses of human potential that inspire, comfort, and transform. They remind us that consciousness is far more mysterious and capable than our everyday experience suggests. They challenge us to question assumptions about the nature of self, the boundaries of awareness, and the relationship between mind and matter. For those who have experienced them, out-of-body experiences often remain among the most significant events of their lives. The direct experience of consciousness beyond the body's boundaries can shatter previous worldviews and open new possibilities for understanding existence. Whether interpreted through spiritual, psychological, or neuroscientific frameworks, these experiences expand our conception of human consciousness and its place in the universe. As we continue to explore the phenomenon of out-of-body experiences, we're not just studying an anomaly of consciousness, but investigating the fundamental nature of awareness itself. Each OBE offers a natural experiment in consciousness, a window into how awareness operates when freed from its usual constraints. The insights gained from this research might ultimately revolutionize our understanding of consciousness, death, and the nature of reality itself. The study of out-of-body experiences reminds us that consciousness remains nature's deepest mystery. Despite centuries of philosophical inquiry and decades of neuroscientific research, we still don't fully understand how awareness arises, why it feels like something to be conscious, or what the ultimate limits of consciousness might be. Out-of-body experiences, in all their strangeness and profundity, keep these questions alive and urgent, pushing us to expand our understanding of what it means to be conscious beings in a mysterious universe. In this twilight space between waking and sleeping, between embodiment and transcendence, between the known and the unknown, out-of-body experiences offer us glimpses of consciousness in its most fluid and remarkable state. They remind us that the boundaries we take for granted, between self and world, inside and outside, here and there, are more flexible than they appear. In studying these experiences, we're not just investigating an unusual phenomenon, but exploring the fundamental nature of what we are. The journey through the landscape of out-of-body experiences has taken us from the operating rooms, where cardiac arrest patients float above their bodies, to the meditation cushions, where practitioners deliberately cultivate disembodied awareness. We've explored the neuroscience that maps the brain regions involved in maintaining our usual sense of embodiment, and the philosophy that grapples with what these experiences mean for our understanding of consciousness. We've considered the therapeutic potential of OBEs and their implications for how we approach death and dying. Throughout this exploration, we've seen how out-of-body experiences sit at the intersection of multiple disciplines and perspectives. They're simultaneously neurological events that can be studied with brain scanners, and profound subjective experiences that transform people's understanding of existence. They're ancient phenomena described in humanity's oldest spiritual traditions and cutting-edge subjects for virtual reality research. They're deeply personal experiences that can't be fully shared, and universal patterns that appear across all cultures. The mystery of out-of-body experiences ultimately mirrors the mystery of consciousness itself. How does matter give rise to mind? How does objective neural activity create subjective experience? Can awareness exist independently of its physical substrate? These questions have puzzled humanity for millennia, and out-of-body experiences offer tantalizing clues without definitive answers. They remind us that consciousness is stranger and more wonderful than we typically imagine. As research continues and our understanding deepens, out-of-body experiences will likely continue to challenge and expand our models of consciousness. Whether they ultimately prove to be complex hallucinations, generated entirely within the brain, or genuine instances of consciousness transcending physical boundaries, they've already enriched our understanding of human awareness. They've shown us that the sense of being located within our bodies is an active construction that can be deconstructed, that consciousness is more flexible than everyday experience suggests, and that the boundaries of self are more permeable than they seem. The study of out-of-body experiences also highlights the importance of taking subjective experience seriously in consciousness research. While neuroscience tends to focus on objective, measurable phenomena, OBEs remind us that the subjective dimension of consciousness is equally real and important. The feeling of floating above one's body, the quality of awareness during an OBE, the transformative impact of the experience, these subjective aspects are as much a part of the phenomenon as any neural correlates. As we integrate insights from out-of-body experience research into our broader understanding of consciousness, we're developing more complete models of awareness that acknowledge both its physical basis and its subjective richness. These models might eventually help us understand not just OBEs, but the full spectrum of conscious experience, from ordinary waking awareness through dreams, meditation states, psychedelic experiences, and perhaps even death itself. The implications of this research extend beyond academic understanding to practical applications in medicine, therapy, education, and technology. As we learn to safely induce and guide out-of-body experiences, we might develop new treatments for trauma, new approaches to end-of-life care, new methods for enhancing creativity and empathy, and new technologies for extending consciousness beyond its traditional boundaries. The possibilities are as vast as consciousness itself. Yet even as we pursue scientific understanding and practical applications, we must remember that out-of-body experiences touch on some of humanity's deepest concerns and highest aspirations. They speak to our longing to transcend physical limitations, our hope for consciousness beyond death, our sense that we are more than our bodies. These experiences deserve to be approached with both scientific rigor and philosophical depth, with both skeptical inquiry and openness to mystery. The phenomenon of out-of-body experiences ultimately invites us to expand our conception of what is possible for human consciousness. They suggest that awareness might be capable of modes of operation we're only beginning to discover, that the boundaries we take for granted might be more flexible than they appear, that consciousness itself might be far stranger and more wonderful than our everyday experience suggests. In studying these remarkable states, we're not just investigating an anomaly, but exploring the farther reaches of human potential. As we drift back from this exploration of consciousness beyond the body, we carry with us new questions and possibilities. The next time you lie down to sleep, in that twilight moment between waking and dreams, you might notice how loosely consciousness sits within its physical home, how readily it can imagine different perspectives, how naturally it can transcend its usual boundaries. In those moments, you're touching the same capacity that allows for out-of-body experiences, the fundamental flexibility of awareness that makes us capable of imagining ourselves elsewhere, else when otherwise. The study of out-of-body experiences continues to evolve, with each new discovery raising more questions than it answers. As our tools become more sophisticated and our frameworks more inclusive, we might eventually understand how consciousness can seem to separate from the body, what this tells us about the nature of awareness, and what it means for our understanding of life, death, and everything in between. Until then, these experiences remain one of consciousness's most intriguing mysteries, inviting us to question our assumptions and expand our understanding of what it means to be aware. In the end, out-of-body experiences remind us that consciousness is not a solved problem but an ongoing mystery, not a fixed phenomenon but a fluid process, not a limitation but a possibility. They invite us to approach our own awareness with curiosity and wonder, recognizing that even the most ordinary aspects of consciousness, like feeling located within our bodies, are remarkable achievements that can teach us about the nature of mind. In studying how consciousness can transcend its usual boundaries, we learn not just about extraordinary states, but about the extraordinary nature of awareness itself.